Good afternoon and welcome to the March work session of the Cobb County Board of Education. All board members are here and present, and as we always do, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Mr. Doyle, do we have any public comments?
We do, Mr. Chair. We have 4 speakers this afternoon. How much time can we allot?
Let's give each 3 minutes.
Okay, our first speaker is Leroy Hutchins, who will discuss board appreciation and capacity concerns. And he'll be followed by Connie Jackson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this time. My name is Trey Hutchins. I am serving as the South Cobb Council PTA president. We oversee 29 PTAs in South Cobb, those schools that feed into Hillgrove, McEachern, South Cobb High School, and Pebblebrook High School. And so since it's Board Appreciation Week, we wanted to make sure that we appreciated those board members that are within our purview. And so we're appreciating today Dr. Jaha Howard, David Morgan, and Bradley Wheeler. And so I believe Mr. Wheeler has his gift on the table, and we have a couple more items here for Mr. Morgan and Dr. Howard. I would like to move forward and personally invite each of you to the Pebblebrook High School Cluster Town Hall, which will be held Monday, March 25th at 6 p.m. in the Earl Reese Theater at Pebblebrook High School. We will be discussing our SPLOS projects, our elementary school replacement, and those projects that are slated for Pebblebrook High School. In addition, we'll be discussing school council and other issues pertinent to the area. Our town hall will be hosted by Mr. Morgan. So Mr. Morgan, thank you. Lastly, I would like to bring your attention to a school safety concern at Pebblebrook High School as it relates to the capacity. We have approximately 15 or so learning cottages, and we're just over capacity approximately by 600 students. Our students are starting to express a concern as it relates to getting to class between those 3-minute breaks and also the lunch time, being unable to eat within the 20 minutes or the 22 minutes that are allowed. And so most of those tardies are starting to relate to having some discipline behind it as far as detention, which then does not allow them to participate in ELC and some of those other exemptions that they would have if it had not been for some of those disciplinary issues. So we're going to ask that you assist us with some of those capacity concerns and some of those overcrowded concerns. One of the immediate solutions that the community has come together to discuss would be redistricting the 600 kids that were over capacity to our neighboring high school, South Cobb High School, which is 600 kids, ironically, under capacity. I believe 19% of Garrett Middle School currently attends Pebblebrook High School, and the other 80% go to South Cobb High School. And while that's only approximately 170 children, it will add some relief if those students that attend Garrett Middle School were able to attend high school with 100% of their peers from middle school. That would be an immediate, kind of fix. I know we do have capital projects that are slated for the next 3 to 4 years. However, the concerns kind of can't wait 3 to 4 years. So we're asking that we observe whatever solutions that are possible so that we can make the best decisions for those students at Pebblebrook High School. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Connie Jackson, who will discuss the Senate, followed by Stacy Dax.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. It's been that kind of a day already. I would like to bring you an update because I know probably most of you lead busy lives and have not possibly heard about what the Senate did this morning. We fought back a couple weeks ago a voucher bill in the House and the Senate. And unfortunately, this morning it was tacked on to another bill in the Senate. And they are trying to, of course, use public school funds for private schools. And of course, we are very, very against this. I know that the majority of you probably agree with us, some might not. But public school funds are just that, public school funds. And they're here to serve our children in public schools. You can't take a single child and make that one-to-one comparison. Funds should not be pulled out of public schools. The cost that they're talking about is millions. possibly even $250 million. That's a lot of money. It does not need to be stripped from our public schools, which are already hurting for the money that they need to accomplish things, particularly at this time. I would like to thank our very own Lindsey Tippins, who stood against them. He was the dissenting vote on it. He was a small group of Republican defectors, and he was the lone vote today when the bill exited the committee. He said that it doesn't require the same tests or the same accountability that are mandated in public schools, and the parents and taxpayers won't have the accountability, so he cannot support this. So I'm asking that our school board take a position on this and say no to this bill, that we stand with public schools and public money not going to vouchers and not leaving the public schools where the children need it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stacy Dax, who will discuss Campbell High School renovations, followed by Tony Waybright.
Good afternoon. The City of Smyrna supported SPLOST 5 because the superintendent described improvements to Campbell being similar to Osborne's, which would support our projected growth. We supported it because the consultant described how school development had followed a counterclockwise circle through Cobb, and this was our turn, especially because our area had so much growth and we had some of the oldest schools in the county. We supported SPLOST 5 because staff described the improvements to the cafeteria and learning commons that would have to be made to match our growth. We supported it because we were told our projects would be on the shovel-ready list due to our growth and overcrowding. In short, we supported SPLOST 5 because we could envision a Campbell High School that provided our kids with facilities and an educational experience that was equitable with other Cobb County high schools, like the recently completed $93 million Walton High School. What was presented to us instead was a Band-Aid fix for the largest high school in Cobb County. The cafeteria improvements we were promised don't even come close to remedying the problems that exist for the currently enrolled students, and many will continue to have to forego lunch in the new space because there isn't time to get through the line. The plan provides 30 new 21st century classrooms and would leave us stuck with 120 leftovers from the 1960s and a net gain of only 18 classrooms. Imagine our surprise when we were told that we didn't need any more classrooms because the new numbers showed that we would never grow larger than 3,000 students. May I remind you that our current enrollment is 2,900 students. When presented with this plan at the March 6th Town Hall meeting, we asked about the 2015 study that projected 3,500 students and were condescendingly told to ignore them because they were outdated. We asked how the renovation plan could be expanded if the numbers that were only a year old turned out to be correct. Again, we were told that it wouldn't matter because it's now policy in Cobb that no Cobb County high school would ever be larger than 3,000 students. In fact, we were told that we would be redistricted if we grew larger, and therefore no further additions and improvements would be needed. This is in direct contradiction to Mr. Ragsdale's assurance that redistricting was off the table. The proposed renovations and addition include some great ideas, but only if they're the first phase of a long-term plan making all of Campbell a great 21st century high school.
30 seconds.
We cannot accept them as the best and final improvements to Campbell High School. Thank you.
Our final speaker, Mr. Chairman, is Tony Waybright, who will discuss Campbell High School and SPLOST.
Good afternoon. Special thank you to Mr. Adams for wearing his Campbell blue shirt. We appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Please do not make any decisions on any of our Cobb schools until we have a second independent enrollment study. Before SPLOST 4 was planned, CCSD used McKibbin's for enrollment studies. In 2014, a new study was done by Davis Demographics. The Davis study projected dramatically higher high school enrollments, including 3,500 students for Walton. A second study was immediately requested, and that new study provided the data that Walton did not have to be replanned and that the current plans of 3,000 students were sufficient. Today, we're in a similar predicament, just with the numbers going a different direction. Projections in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018 all pointed to the need for a much larger Campbell High School. The presentation of the 2018 study focused on the positive growth all across Cobb County, with more in some areas like Smyrna and South Cobb. That's on the video and in the report. At the SPLOST Town Hall meeting on March 6th, a stunning reversal in fortunes was announced. We were told that enrollment in CCSD was shrinking so fast that growth was down, including Smyrna, and Cobb and Campbell High School in particular was not going to grow above 3,000, almost our current enrollment. We were asked to believe a report that completely contradicted everything that we see with our eyes and in our neighborhoods in Smyrna. It didn't matter that the biggest elementary schools in our feeder pattern have 20 to 30% more kindergartners and first graders today than they did 5 years ago. Our pipeline is getting bigger, not smaller. It didn't matter that we had 200 more students total in all of our feeder schools than the projection showed we were supposed to have in 2018. Somehow 20% growth in K-1 and total enrollments larger than projected somehow was translating into lower than projected enrollments for our high school. The growth projected just 1 year ago was projected now to reverse so quickly that Campbell's enrollment was going to remain steady or perhaps slightly decline. Everyone likes to build great buildings, and great buildings are pretty to look at. Dr. Howard has done a great job in the last 5 years
30 seconds.
working on something different, and that was building community around our schools. And that has become the focus of the growth and the improvement in our Smyrna area schools. It is that dramatic sense of improvement. We ask you, please get a second opinion on enrollments, and please do not destroy the sense of community for the 20% of our families who would be redistricted if the proposals are continued. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And now we have approval of the minutes from the February 13th, 2019 meeting. And if there is no objection, those minutes are now approved. Dr. Howard.
To see if we could, as effective for the February meeting, if we could at least put the subject matter of the public comments in the minutes. The one from February, we collect that data when people make public comments. And when we have the official minutes, I think it would be great to include just the subject matter of those that make public comments for the official record.
I think for right now, yes, Mr. Scamhorn.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I was trying to, I couldn't hear what he was saying.
All right, Dr. Howard, you want to
Yeah, I'll repeat.
Please.
When we make public comments, we oftentimes, we have to write our name, address, and subject matter of the public comment. So we have that data already available. And so what I'm suggesting is that for the minutes for February, that we include the subject matter for the public comments. And the rest of the minutes look great as they are, but I'm saying as the minutes as they are, including the details of subject matter in the public comment section.
Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to maybe have us discuss this more because it's been my understanding in the 6 years I've been on the board, and even before that, that public comment is not part of the official meeting. So I would take it, right now, I'd be hesitant to agree to that being part of the official minutes of the school board.
We probably need to discuss it because that's my understanding also, that primarily the minutes are there to record policy. And I'd have to, Mr. Parliamentarian, do you have any quick solution right now, or we better just take it under advisement for the time being?
Well, I can really only speak to the procedural posture, and I take it that the chair asked if there's any objection to unanimous consent without action. I think we have an objection, and so the step would be to either have a vote or maybe accept a motion. It's up to the chair to amend the minutes. If you are going to amend the minutes, I don't know if Dr. Howard has the document that shows the subject, just so you know what you're approving to go into the minutes.
Sure, I believe we have that information collected already, and we collect that before all public comments.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying we
No,
should.
I think we have it somewhere, but
Yeah.
it's probably helpful to know exactly what
Sure.
topics are there.
So we know
whether
exactly
that's-
what wording. And just for reference as well, with board recognitions, we include what we're recognizing. That doesn't have anything to do with policy, and those are reflected in the minutes. So I think it's consistent with what we've been doing to add this. So I'm open for discussion, even if we don't do it for February, but I'm open for this to potentially start for March.
Okay, for right now, procedurally, are you making a motion to not accept the minutes as delivered?
I move that we amend the minutes to include public comment subject matter.
All right, we have a motion to amend the minutes. Do I hear a second? Have a second from Ms. Davis. Motion second. Do I have any discussion? Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Howard brings up that our recognitions are part of the minutes. Well, that's appropriate because those programs are part of our curriculum and part of our school programs. Public comment can be made on anything, from the absurd to the appropriate, to good suggestions that may be incorporated into further discussions, which become part of our minutes. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamahorn. Mr. Morgan, and then Mr. Wheeler.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. If public comment were to be included, what do we feel like would be compromised, or what do we feel like would, I guess that's my question. If it is included, even if it is a topic that, some, if not all of us might find inappropriate, or use Randy's word, absurd, I still, what's being compromised? What is, if it is documented in our minutes?
Just to clarify, I definitely don't want to put quotations from the public comment, just general subject matter.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess tagging on both of Mr. Morgan and Mr. Howard, and Mr. Scamahorn, where it says board member and superintendent remarks, there's nothing there. It's just like this with the public comment. It's just listed as a thing. My question is, if you add one, do you add both? And what exactly? I think I'm hearing what you're saying. It'd be like, for example, Mr. Hutchins, board appreciation, town hall invitation, capacity concerns. That would just be it. What would happen if you go to board member comments? You're going to have 7 pages of superintendent's reports. I mean, I'm not leaning one way or the other. I get what does it hurt, but I guess I'd throw it to Mr. Parliamentarian again. What is the?
I think it's good that the amendment was specifically for public comment and not for board comments.
Mr. Ragsdale has a comment.
So I think we've got 2 issues on the table here, if I can. So one is Dr. Howard would like to, and we have a motion to amend the February minutes to reflect public comment. That's for right now today, moving forward. I think for the other issue of including or not including, I think we need some time for us to look and see, number one, what is appropriate that, it's been brought up. Is it part of the meeting? Is it not part of the meeting? And then what is compromised? I think we need to do an analysis of the request, and we'll be able to bring that information back. So I think there's 2 different separate but similar items, with the motion being most immediate.
Okay, Mr. Scamahorn and then Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo what the superintendent said, actually a little bit more succinct than what I was going to say, but I'll piggyback off, is the agenda has been set for this time. And if we want to change something procedure like that, I think that would be an agenda item for a work session and to give us time to weigh the pros and cons or the appropriateness. And so I'll leave it at that. But what's on the floor right now is the motion is, do we amend this month's meeting or last month's meeting or not? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scamahorn. Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've got a question of how transparent are we going to be? Now, having public comment is not a requirement of the school board, but we do it and we televise it. So you could make the case that it is part of our agenda. However, we could cease to video and transmit the public comment sections, which would negate the need for any kind of documentation as far as the minutes is concerned. So, there's several avenues the board can take. We've always been very transparent and let the public see what the public is saying to the board. So I think the question is, it needs to be reviewed and explored as to how we can be transparent with our public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Banks. Any other comments? Okay, we've had a motion, a second discussion. The motion is that we amend the February minutes, right?
And just for one question, I guess, is the proposal to let citizens name their topic, or is Ms. Gordon going to, use her, as she's taking it down, what was actually discussed?
Dr. Howard.
I think that Ms. Gordon should kind of filter that
Okay.
and we can even have certain subject matters available just to make that easy and more succinct.
Okay, I think we need to vote on the motion. Mr. Parliamentarian? Yeah, we're going to vote on the motion right now. All right, and then we've opened up discussion for the future. Is that okay? All right, so all in favor of amending the minutes to reflect the February public comments, raise your hand signifying aye. Okay, those opposed, no. Signify by, all right, so that's 4-3. All right, and now that we've gone through the minutes, we're going to come to board. All right, Mr. Wheeler.
Okay. Is it appropriate at this time to put that on the discussion, or it's to be a board agenda for the next?
I think
Mr. Howard would bring that as an agenda.
Yeah, we can anticipate
I just want to be clear on that.
All right.
Right, and then at this point, since there was technically an objection to approval of the minutes, there can be a vote to approve the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
with
right.
a motion and a second.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Mr. Scamahorn, is there a second? Mr. Wheeler, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, raise their hand. That's 5-2. Oh, I'm sorry, those opposed, I'm sorry. There we go, 2, yes, 5-2. All right, now, moving on to board business. The first item is the 2019 Georgia School Board Association Annual Delegate Meeting will be in June in Savannah. I've asked Mr. Banks, and he has agreed to be our official delegate. We get to send one official delegate representing the board. So I want to thank Mr. Banks for that, but I would remind all the board members that if you do want to attend, you can. And if you need to work out arrangements, you can see Ms. Gordon, and she can work that out for you. Okay? And then the next thing is, you may or may not have studied the GSBA, Georgia School Board Association legislative positions. We really, we have our own legislative agenda that we promote. So if you want to read those, if you want to have any input, or if you want to, talk to Mr. Banks before he leaves, you can get with him. And next, yes, Mr. Banks.
Mr. Chairman, since you bring up the GSBA legislative positions, Should we make those public, and should the board either adopt them or reject them?
Yeah, just information.
But, so, that can be made public then?
I would assume they're on the GSBA's website, since they're their legislative priorities and not ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, okay. All right, next, we are going to be talking about our upcoming board retreat. We'll be putting together a date to see what works out for everyone. We'll also be asking board members to provide a couple of topics. We'll start with 2 each, as we've done in the past, and we'll do this by email so we can put together the agenda and get the dates right, so that some of these topics that come up in our meetings that we just want to kind of bat around and talk about where we might want to head as far as policy, we can bring that up at the retreat. And next, we have a report from Mr. Scamahorn on the Facilities and Technology Citizens Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee met on Tuesday, February 26, 2019. The following officers were elected to represent the F&T committee. Ms. Thea Powell is chair, Mr. Larry Darnell is vice chair, and Ms. Jerica Richardson is secretary. The committee reviewed previously board-approved projects, the intergovernmental agreements between Cobb County Board of Commissioners and the Cobb County School District for roadway improvements along Favor Road at Osborne High School, the architect appointment for Sprayberry High School renovations and gymnasium addition, and contract award for combined replacement elementary school for Harmony Leland Elementary and Clay Elementary School. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scamahorn. Any questions for Mr. Scamahorn? Mr. Banks?
Yes, do you have, did y'all discuss the status of all the Splash 4 projects that are still in process? What's the status of those?
No, SPLOST 4 came up in a couple of topics in a general sense, but not all the SPLOST 4. But if, with permission, Mr. Adams, do you recall any specific SPLOST 4? No, sir.
So there's no status report on what projects are still open?
Not the F&T this month, no.
Okay.
But if you like, I could work on that for the April meeting.
One other question. We're starting Splash 5 now, and we've got 2 months into it now. How much revenue has been received?
For Mr. Adams?
Mr. Johnson, I don't have it.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Is it,
Sorry,
Mr.
you turn your
Chair,
mic on?
question?
We can get that for you, Mr. Banks. We don't have it right at our fingertips right now, but we can get that for you.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, what's the relationship of what we actually collected, what we're projected to collect? Are our projections going to be evenly divided by 60 months, or are they going to be up and down at different months? 'Cause
Let me weigh in on that.
Christmas-
If you recall, when Mr. Johnson brings the quarterly financial report, that is part of that each quarter. And it shows a graphical representation of not only the projections and the revenue, but the revenue compared to last year's revenue. So that it will be compared, and it is compared in that graphical format. And also, to your point earlier about transparency, that is also on the webpage. The quarterly financial report does that, but if you need additional, we can get you that as well.
Okay, but we have not gotten this quarter's report, so we're 2 months into this quarter, so we don't have anything. So we have no idea, or, well, somebody has an idea how much we've collected.
Do you have that, Brad?
I'll be presenting the third quarter of SPLOST revenue, I guess, in the May board meeting, which would be the usual time frame.
But that's Splash 4, not 5.
I'm sorry, SPLOST 5.
Okay, so right now, we don't know.
Well, I can get the information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Morgan, please tell us about Board Policy JBCCA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, again. Good afternoon again to everyone. Board Policy JBCCA, one of the advantages of having the privilege and pleasure of being on the school board for a decade is you can delineate between what's anecdotal and what might be a trend, because you've had enough experiences to know this might be a one-off, and then when something actually is something that is more readily taking place or happening. And the reason I bring this policy up before us is that we currently have a practice where if, Sharice, if you and your family live in a certain school zone, you know, you're zoned for that particular school, and your children attend that school. And let's say for whatever reason, you guys move, but you want your child to, or you want your children to stay in that school. Well, what happens is, what I've seen, as I said, is more than anecdotal, is the first thing that happens is the parents receive a note saying, hey, you no longer live in this zone and you have to leave this school. Now, is there a process where they can go and they can go and lobby the principal, hey, I want my children to stay at this school? Yes, they can. But a way in my mind that we can improve this policy is, I don't even think they should have to do that if they want to stay at that school. You're already enrolled in the school, so it's not like you're adding somebody. The child is already there. And what I have seen happen over and over and over again is parents from all over the district call me and say, hey, I really love blah, blah, blah high school. I really love blah, blah, blah middle school. I love blah, blah, blah elementary school. And they're telling me that we have to leave at the end of the year, by the end of the semester. And and that creates a real genuine stress and strain on that family, especially if it is a school that they enjoy. So what am I proposing? I'm proposing this. If a child is already enrolled in a school, zoned for that school, and they go to that school, if the parents move somewhere in Cobb County, not outside of Cobb, somewhere in Cobb County, that they can stay at the school without having to go and lobby principal or whoever it might be, as long as they're in good standing academically and behaviorally, I don't see any reason that that child or that family shouldn't be able to stay at that school, because you're not adding a seat, you're not adding anything. This child's already a part of that FTE or whatever we want to call it, and I feel like that's just the right thing to do for people and the right thing to do for families. I certainly welcome any feedback and or comments that my colleagues or others might have.
Okay, Ms. Davis.
I think one additional reason why that might be hard is just because of the size of the school. My belief is that whatever we communicate in terms of the reasons why someone wouldn't be able to stay is what needs to be followed. And so making sure that if it's behavior, academic, that is actually listed, and that we're not using reasons that aren't advertised to the community. But certainly if a school is overcrowded, they're gonna have concerns about keeping students there.
Okay, Mr. Scammahorn, and then.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's also related, Mr. Morgan, to something else too. And I've had 2, maybe 3 examples already in the last month or 2, where a student is at an elementary school, but yet they're in the feeder program, or they're in the middle school, but yet they don't quite qualify to move on to the high school because they didn't win the lottery. So I really think it needs more attention so that people can have more flexibility. And I would like to see us look a little more diligent toward our school choice program to see if we can't expand it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's really what you're saying is, does the parents still have the choice to leave their student there or move them to the new district? Is that fair?
Mr. Morgan, and then, all right, he's going to answer him, then I'm, all right. Okay, Dr. Howard?
I appreciate Mr. Morgan bringing this to the attention so we can just discuss it as a board. I do have some significant concerns. I'm echoing what Ms. Davis mentioned. We have plenty of schools that are already kind of over capacity, like in our area in Smyrna and Mableton. And if a child starts, if I'm understanding you correctly, if a child's in second grade and the parents, they move to another area, I think you're suggesting that this child should be allowed to stay enrolled for the current school year and subsequent years until they're finished at that school. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's, I'm going to professionally disagree with that line of thought. I think that there is some merit to the idea of potentially finishing that particular school year as a buffer and letting the parents know that yes, they will have to go where they're zoned to attend. And then if we go through the proper channels of if there is capacity for that child to come back, I think there may be some room to operate, just as we do for any other choice process. But maybe there's some room to operate for that particular school year. But I think it's a significant mistake to consider if somebody is at a school that they're in, they're just grandfathered in until they're done, whenever they want to be done. I think that's a miscalculation.
Thank you. So it were two things that were brought up that I want to specifically address. First, I do think that there should be stated reasons.
That's a pizza delivery. No.
Love it. I love it. Yes, I think it should be spelled out that, hey, you stay in blah, 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 elementary, middle, or high. You are you're passing student, you're passing your classes, your behavior is in line, etc. I don't see anything wrong with that. Actually, I think that should be spelled out. Now, on the capacity issue, capacity in my mind is this. I could see if a school was over capacity and we were saying, okay, I'm going to take this child and add this child to your school. Then you're adding to the capacity of an already overcrowded school. But my train of thought is, why would we say that if the child is already enrolled in the school? I mean, like, I've had situations where a child has gone through 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and for whatever reason, I actually had one situation where the parents felt like they thought they moved closer to the school, but the attendance line said that they were out. And thankfully, we got that situation fixed. But I don't see a capacity concern if the child is already enrolled in the school. We already counting you. Like, we're not saying we're taking the number from 2,583 to 2,584. This child is already at the school, has been at the school, so I don't see what would be compromised if we say, okay, child is in good academic standing, child has good behavior, you're already a part of this culture in the school, mom and dad can get you back and forth. I don't understand what would be compromised if them say, no, you live in another attendance zone, so you no longer can attend this school. You're already there. I don't understand what, I mean, last thing I'll say, it would be like if this room was at capacity, and we said we were at capacity, and if someone said, well, someone else can't come in because we're at capacity. But if you're already sitting in here, I don't understand what it is we're saying. I don't understand what's compromised. If you're already a part of the people sitting in this room, I don't understand if you say, well, I need to use the restroom and come back. Oh, we can't let you back. Well, I already have a seat. So it's not like you can't tell me that, well, you don't have any more seats. I do have a seat. My seat is right there and it's empty. And I think that same rationale and logic can be applied to how we can improve this policy in terms of allowing the parents to stay as opposed to the current process, which, as I said, you are told to, that you have to leave the school, whether it's the end of the year or whatever the case might be.
All right, Mr. Banks, and then Mr. Scammahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You could also take the opposite approach to this. Supposedly that child is in a school and the parent does move into another school district, but that school district is over capacity. So now what do? Are you going to reject that child and not let them go to that school that they're zoned in now, or leave them where they're at? So that's a dilemma that, I don't think has been addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ragsdale.
Let me throw something out. Normally I wait until the end of the discussion to kind of add anything that maybe has been missed, but I think this is very important that we're missing here. And that is said cost of anything that we're talking about. We've mentioned choice, and I will say that the Cobb County School District has done more to expand the HB 251 choice than any other school district in the state. And that did not come without a cost. Okay, so I want everybody to understand that the modifications to our choice policy based on HB 251, we have to utilize on an annual basis 15 allotments. That accounts for $1.4 million. So expanding choice will never be my recommendation, because quite honestly, I don't want to pour additional money into allotments. And it's easy to say, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Morgan, about it's the right thing to do for families and people, but we've got to take the focus of the organization. And when we talk about, it's already been brought up about projections. For us to have as accurate of projections as possible, we have to have a process in place that we can rely on. And when there are unknown variables that are injected, and it may, the argument can be, well, it's only one kid here or two kids there. I will use Kemp Elementary as the example. There are over 100, and that number escapes me, and I know that's not normal for me to say, but I want to say it's close to 200 HB 251 students at Kemp. That's a significant injection, and when you again, the 1.4 million is simple math. We use $93,000 per teacher allotment, so 15 times 93,000 is $1.395 million actually. So I rounded it up to be 1.4. But when we're talking about dollars and we're talking about allotments, let's also not forget class size. Because that's always going to be a focus. And to be able to properly manage class size, again, it goes back to projections. It goes back to students living within an attendance zone. And I'll also throw out, and we have gotten into these situations before where a family moves and they think they're moving, and potentially you go to Google Maps and it is closer to one school than the other. But we have a utility on our transportation webpage where you can put in any address in Cobb County, and it shows you every elementary, middle, and high school that you will go to. So we have gone above and beyond to try to make sure that everything is accessible as possible. But again, and especially as we're approaching budget season, we're and I'll make some comments before Brad gets into his presentation at that point in time. But $1.4 million is significant, especially, and I know Sherry will provide an amen to this because she has inherited the allotment process. Merry Christmas for that. And that is no small feat every year. Because, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, but allotments is probably the one most complex situation that we have in the school district, and it's complex for a number of reasons. One of which, probably the highest priority, is budget money. So when we get into those conversations about kids going to schools that are not in the attendance zone, we have to keep everything in mind. And I understand, that is one of the, and redistricting was brought up, I think by one of the Campbell representatives that spoke. Redistricting is never something, especially at the high school level, that you want to employ as a tool unless it is absolutely necessary. I'm not saying we will never be at that point, because I know we will. There's a day coming where we're going to have to do a total district-wide redistricting. And we don't want to get to that day sooner than we have to. Now, there are some strategic redistrictings that can take place, and we are always looking at those. Does it make feasible sense? When you look at attendance zones, one of the first questions that comes to mind always on any attendance zone is, what is this little hook down here? Why is this going, out of a straight line kind of thing? And unfortunately, we have lost historical knowledge of how attendance zones were drawn, because, again, it has been a minute since those were done. So, but what I will throw out, the last point about what I'm trying to make is, everything rolls up. So while one or two students that is a current situation may not seem to be a big deal, if you have a number of kindergarten students that all of a sudden move out but are allowed to stay, well, that's for 5 more years. So it does roll up. And finally, I know I said that's the last point, so I was mistaken on that. Darryl York is sitting at the ready to talk about the policy, but the current policy, correct me if I'm wrong, Darryl, the current policy allows for a student to either finish the semester or the year out at the school in which they are attending. So the current policy already allows kind of, what I think it was Dr. Howard, you made that point, or Sharice, one of the two, made the point about it's a good thing to let them finish out the year, because, again, you don't want to disrupt a child's academic life mid-year kind of thing. So I think the current policy does allow for that. I think that we're good, and again, we're going above and beyond on the HB 251 choice. So,
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to, in all candor and transparency, push back against what our superintendent said. First is this. Go back to your point, Mr. Banks. One of the things that I believe is this, is you can't have a set of facts. We can't have a set of facts for this situation and then exclude those same facts if it's something you don't want. Case in point. Right now, if student X goes to a particular school, moves out the district, but wants the kids to stay at the school, right? We say no. Well, we don't say no. We say, hey, there's a process. And if the principal says yes, you can do it. If the principal says no, you can't do it. And we bring up said cost, right? However, as you said, Mr. Banks, if that same child moves in a district that's already over capacity, we don't say you can't come. So my question is, why can't you stay where you are if you so desire, but we'll let you go somewhere that's over capacity? To me, that just doesn't, that rationally, that didn't line up. You can go to a school that's overcrowded if you move in there, in that district, and we don't say, hey, the cost associated with this, no, you're a zone to go there and you go. But if you want to stay at a school, we're not adding anything, you're already there. You can't stay there. Now, I just want y'all to come with me, and if I'm not making sense, then I want you to tell me, but in my mind, I cannot connect the dots. Second thing I'll say is this. I think that it is very important that we, as much as possible, govern and make decisions based on pragmatism. I think a lot of times when it comes to change, innovation, one of the things that happens is whether you're for it or whether it's a particular issue you're for or against, is when you can effectively use a scenario that's never happened. If I can use a scenario that's never happened, but can convince you, Clem, that one day it might, I've done my job, even though it's never happened. And what I'm saying is that our overcapacity issues, whether you're Campbell, Pebblebrook, et cetera, our allotment complexity or issues have never been attributable to saying, John Doe, Jane Doe, you go to this school, you want to stay at this school, and we're going to make, and if that's what you so desire, stay. You don't have to get away from a principal, superintendent, school board member, anybody. I just don't, again, those are the comments that I make, and I would love to hear feedback, because if I have a blind spot, I'll legitimately listen to it.
I need to make one correction, because you mentioned that cost is used as the reason for not letting a student stay, and that's not the case. It's the policy. We follow board policy. So that when a student is not allowed to stay past the end of the semester or the year, it's based on board policy.
Mr. Scamhorn, did you have anything you wanted to say? And then can we kind of wrap it
I
up?
think so. I haven't forgotten all of it. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what Mr. Morgan's saying, and I'm leaning toward that way, but we may need more discussion. And it may be, Mr. Chair, more appropriate that we make this a retreat item which is open to the public, and where we can really look at the pros and cons. However, we haven't really put on the table why parents may want a student to stay. If they've been there for a long time, that's where their friends are, that they're comfortable with that. And there's several reasons. There may be a reason where grandmother or grandfather may have to be there to pick them up or whatever. There's a lot of reasons, and I'm not saying we're able to satisfy all those reasons, but certainly we should be able to look periodically at what we can do to accommodate our customers. And so I'm sympathetic toward Mr. Morgan's position, and would certainly, without taking anything from Mr. Morgan, I'll let him decide how he wants to proceed on this. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamhorn. Mr. Morgan, one last word.
Yes, I would like to see if there is enough support on the board to move to the next step, which would be a draft, a policy draft that includes my suggestions in terms of how we can tweak this policy to make it better. See if there's enough appetite for that.
Mr. Scamhorn had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment on Mr. Morgan's last comment, and the parliamentarian may be able to help us, although there's probably flexibility here. I'm not sure we're ready for a draft more than looking at the parameters of should we proceed with the draft. What do you think of that? Thank you.
If I might, I certainly am willing to do that, looking at the what the parameters are, digging deeper, because as I said, the reality, the pragmatism might prove me wrong. I could be dead wrong, but looking at it and seeing where we are and what that might or might not impact, I think I would accept that as a meaningful next step as well.
Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to go back a little bit in history, how long have we had HB 251?
Hello, Mr. York.
I believe that began in 2008, when the legislature passed House Bill 251.
So we've had it for almost 10 years now. I think what Mr. Scammahorn alluded to is that we do probably need to revisit an old policy now, 10, 11 years old. It's an old policy. I know there's been some changes, but we probably need to go back and look and see if does it match what this board wants to happen as far as 251 is concerned.
Let me throw something out there, Mr. Banks. HB 251 is not a policy, it is a law.
That's the law, but we have policy that's based on that law.
That's correct.
That's what I'm talking about, revisiting.
The policies go above and beyond the law. So is that what you're saying? Do we want to keep that?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we really haven't visited those since, what, 10 years? So I know we've updated over the years, but we probably need to revisit the whole thing.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan has brought in the past several recommendations, the feeder pattern priority, sibling priority, those modifications that I referenced going above and beyond. But we can certainly do an analysis of the current policies that are reflective of HB 251 and kind of compare and contrast HB 251 to what we do as a school district based on board policy.
Is it agreed that we will put this on the retreat agenda?
Whatever the board's pleasure. We can create a report and get to you quickly via email if that's the way you want to receive it, and then determine if you want to have it as a retreat item to discuss.
When is the retreat?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier. We're going to work on a date and bring the topics together.
Okay, the only question I have is, are we going to approve the budget in April or May? May. So we've got to make decisions because the 251s have to be approved by.
They're already. Those are done. Speak up to the process. Yes, I'm sorry. That process for the 2019-2020 school year is completed. We took applications during the month of February. Parents were notified on Friday, this past Friday. So,
Okay, but some parents may not elect, even though they're on the list, so the adjustments have to be made.
The waiting list is still there, yes, sir.
So when is the absolute cutoff date? Of when we,
Okay, time out. One point at a time. So your question, when is the process completed? It is completed for this coming up school year. There is no going back and modifying that process. We took application. To your point about the parents that do not elect, remember there is a drop dead date that the parents have to notify and go through this process that's created by board policy to secure their child's seat in the HB 251, whether it's by lottery process or what have you, that they have notified that they want. If they don't do that, then the waiting list that is in place as we speak, it will go down in order of those on the waiting list. So 2019-2020 school year HB 251 process is closed.
but my question is, when is the actual close date as far as those that are going to be accepted and those that are not going to be accepted?
Do you have that date, Mr. York?
Yes, sir. So those that were chosen have been notified. They have there are 2 deadlines in May for them to accept their seat. If any child on that list decides to turn down their seat, there's already a waiting list, and schools can contact children on the waiting list till mid-July. We'd have to have time enough to get those kids enrolled before August 1 starts. But that will not change numbers. That doesn't change anything. So in essence, there are no more applications. Everything is done in place for the 2019-2020 school year.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, to get at the drop dead date kind of issue, the process, the window opens in February.
Yes, sir.
So the next window will open February of 2020. So the drop dead date for any kind of policy modifications would need to be done at the latest. The drop dead date would be the January board meeting prior to the process opening. And I know I'm pushing it to the 11th hour. I know that. So Mr. York is having heart palpitations as we speak.
Lose more hair.
And I will preface that kind of with the caveat that If it's a massive overhaul and it's going to cause the process to change and parameters to change going into that process, we would need additional time. So at the very 11th hour is the January board meeting, but that's assuming that it's tweaks and not an overhaul.
And so my point again is, once we start this discussion, we can start now or next month or whatever. And by the end of December, we have a firm policy revised that we know exactly what it's going to do.
Okay, Mr. Scammahorn would like to speak, and then Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to see if we could come to, obviously Ms. Davis has a comment, but we could come to closure on, if the board so sees fit, to ask the superintendent how much time would he like to have, like 60 days or 90 days, where they could bring together some parameters. And Mr. Morgan, please, this is your subject, where we can look at cost, complexities, and any other ramifications. So I don't know if the superintendent has an idea at this point, or if you'd like to defer until.
As far as the difference, like I was discussing a minute ago about the HB 251 and then board policy, we can get those to you via email ASAP. As far as a recommendation for changing the policy, I will not recommend that we enhance the policy because of all the reasons I listed. Those reasons are not going to change. We can drill into the data and get down to a more specific cost if that's the case. But at this point in time, the law of diminishing returns comes into play, because at some point in time, the potential for the number of students in a grade level in a school that are not in that school's attendance zone plays into projections, which plays into allotments, which plays into overcrowding, which plays into portable units, which plays into, okay, how do we project for a school's enrollment with that wild card, if you will.
If I may, Mr. Chair, real quick, Mr. York, in the years I've been dealing with him, does a yeoman's job, just outstanding. And I'm not sure I would have his job because he's pulled and pushed from every angle. So I know that's easy to say, but thank you very much for the job you've been doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scammahorn. Ms. Davis, I'm going to let you kind of wind it all up.
Thank you. Mr. York, just so people understand, if they're not familiar with the school choice process, if a school is currently over capacity, it will not be on the list, correct?
That is correct, yes, ma'am. We publish a list in February of which schools are accepting and exactly how many seats they have available.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, one more thing.
Yes. I guess, especially with me leaving work and teaching today, when you're teaching in front of children, you have to be the captain of that ship, right? But this is the part I don't understand. I still need someone that, I feel like I know when to let something go. I really do. But this is my question. If a child goes to Pebblebrook High School and it's 2,896 children at that school, you hear me, Trey? Okay. They're already counted. You already go to school. You zoned to go to that school. Someone help me to understand, if you've already been counted for 2 years or however long you've been there, how is it that that can interrupt, disrupt, or potentially bring some level of compromise to our projections, our enrollment numbers? If that could be explained, I will completely yield.
Can we get that in writing? So here's the answer.
Okay.
Of those 2,987 students, if that one that moves out is allowed to stay, what if an allotment is required for 2,987 students, but is not required for 2,986. You've just cost us $93,000 for an allotment that could be utilized somewhere else where there's a class size that needs to be addressed. That's the answer.
That's the answer. Okay. So let's flip the coin on the other side. It's almost like this is a personal conversation happening publicly. Let's flip the coin on the other side. So go back to what David Banks said. If I go to a school that's overcrowded, that's 600 over capacity. So what we're saying, what we are rationalizing is this. You can go to the school where it's already 600 over capacity, but you can't stay at the school where you're already a student and you're already factored into the sauce. Now, if someone can explain that part to me.
You just explained it to yourself. That's the rule. You live in an attendance zone. You go to the school you are slated to attend. If you move out of that attendance zone, you go to the school that you are then moved into that school attendance zone. That's the way it works.
I understand it's the rule, but what I'm saying is that we are in the business of making rules better. If we find that something is, if something is better. No, I still don't get it. It is a rule. I mean, there have been plenty of rules that didn't serve our country's best interests, and we made it better. And in my mind, saying that you can go to a school that's 600 overcrowded because you live at 123 Main Street, but you can't stay at the school where you already are, and you're already baked in. I mean, you're already counted in terms of cost, enrollment. You're already a part of that. I feel that we can make that better, and I will close by saying I would like to, whenever the retreat happens, I would like to see some facts and figures that can either discount the position that I currently have or possibly enhance the position that I currently have so that it goes beyond speculation and we can get down to some raw numbers and see where we stand.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Do we agree that we're going to get some sort of data sent to the board for now?
As of right now, I'm planning to have Daryl York create the comparison of HB 251 and its requirements, and then show what we do by policy over and above HB 251. So that will be in your inbox via email from Kevin Daniel.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. York. You don't have homework, you just have work.
Thank you.
All righty, and now we're going to move to the superintendent's report. Mr. Ragsdale.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, you will find again at your place for Ms. Davis and Dr. Howard. This is your first of many very professional plaques that you will have signed by none other than me. I know that you will display them prominently in your place of business or at your home, but in all seriousness, again, we come back to our mission statement of one team, one goal, student success. The one team starts with us. And as there is on display there, Mr. Cameraman, if you can hit Dr. Howard, you will see for the viewing pleasure of our audience at home, there it is. There it is. There you go. There you go. Yeah. So, the one team starts with us, and as we have just had very spirited conversation and debate, I think the biggest takeaway from what just transpired is that we can debate, we can agree to disagree, and we can still walk away being friends, being team members, and definitely striving for the same goal. And I think. I didn't plan to get down in the weeds on this, but I think that's what's lacking in our current society today is the ability to debate, disagree, and walk away and still be friends and cordial and professional. So I appreciate the opportunity that we have to display that because I think, again, I think it is a lost asset that too many people do not possess in this day. So I appreciate the team that we have, and I know that I speak for 18,000 employees. They appreciate the relationship that we have. You have seen by numerous cards and emails and gifts and that kind of thing how much you are appreciated as a board member. And your sacrifice of your personal time, your family time, your work and professional time to come and be a board member and to do what it takes does not go unnoticed. And again, I know I speak for the 18,000 employees and specifically myself. I appreciate the relationship we have. I appreciate the sacrifice that you guys make and the work that we get done for 113,000 students each and every day. So I greatly appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent, on behalf of the board, thank you, and thank you to the cabinet and to all the leaders that have reached out to us over the last week or whatever. And it's nice, and it's what makes it fun, at least for me, but I believe the whole board agrees. We have a great team to work with, and it's collaborative. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And Mr. Morgan and I will arm wrestle after the first break.
You might get me with that.
Anyway, all right, moving on. One of the topics I'm going to ask Miss Jennifer Lawson to go ahead and come forward. You know, we've been discussing the Career Academy for quite some time. It is a SPLOST 4 project, and I think you will see from her presentation not only the progress that is made, but still today there's so much misinformation out there. I'll just jump out on a limb and call it fake news because you know, there's nothing like letting the facts get in the way of the real story. So, Dr. Howard, you are the proud recipient of said Career Academy. And with that, I will let Ms. Lawson proceed with the presentation, if you will, because I know there'll be debate, maybe not debate, but conversation and questions and those kinds of things. If you can hold those to the end, so she can make it through the presentation and most likely answer some of those.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Superintendent, I bring to you today an update on the status of the district's career, technical, agricultural education program, and more specifically, an update on the progress of the Cobb Career Academy design. At your seat, you have been provided a collection of resources related to this presentation that you may find helpful in referencing as we go through. I would like to quickly draw your attention to the name Cobb Career Academy. Throughout this presentation, you will hear the new facility referred to as the Cobb Career Academy. However, please remember that this name is associated with this particular project for immediate construction needs. We will bring back to the board at a later date an official name for the building we are referring to for the purpose of today's presentation as the Cobb Career Academy. With that being said, it's important to begin today's presentation with a brief overview of the district's overall career, technical, and agricultural education program, otherwise referred to as CTAE, that is available at our middle and high school levels. CTAE is about preparing students for the next step after high school, whether that is immediately following graduation and entering into a career, attending a post-secondary institution, beginning a registered apprenticeship, or joining our military. Whichever path a student may choose, CTAE places an intentional focus on leveraging industry and post-secondary partners combined with K-12 education to ensure students have the requisite skills, knowledge, and experiences to be successful in an ever-changing workforce and world. The state of Georgia offers 130 pathways within 17 different career clusters. The skills and hands-on experiences provided within these pathways prepare students for productive careers that meet current and future workforce needs. Let's take just a moment to review the district's current CTAE program and what that data tells us. We had 36,034 unduplicated students participating in CTAE courses in the middle and high school levels last year. If we take into consideration those students who enrolled in one or more CTAE courses last year, more than 65,000 CTAE seats were occupied by our middle and high school students. We offered 48 pathways across 15 career clusters. We have 2,285 students who completed a pathway. As a reminder, to complete a pathway, you must complete a series of 3 courses within a specific pathway. 69% of our students who chose to take an end-of-pathway assessment, or an EOPA, passed. This is an increase of 23% over the last 3 years. It is important to note that 95.2% of students completing a CTAE pathway in Cobb graduate on time. The positive correlation between our current and previous pathway completion students and on-time graduation is significant and continues to have a positive impact on the overall graduation rate for our district. Finally, we'd like to recognize that our work-based learning students earned a total of $758,547 last year. I believe we would all agree that our CTA programs are not only preparing students for choice-filled lives through career opportunities, but clearly they are already having a positive impact on our county's economic development, and they have yet to graduate from high school. Now that we've provided a bit of context related to the district's overall CTAE program and what these incredible opportunities offer our students at each high school, we'd like to provide an update on the plans and progress toward opening the Cobb Career Academy, as this opportunity is an extension of our current CTAE program. As a courtesy to our new board members and anyone who may not remember all the details associated with this extensive project, let's take a quick stroll down memory lane and briefly review the work and partnerships that have been critical in getting us to where we are today. In 2011, the Georgia Department of Education Career Technical and Agricultural Education Office released a Career Academy white paper regarding the research around Career Academy models and the implications for students and workforce development. As a result, in 2012, a team comprised of district leadership and principals attended the National Career Academy Coalition National Conference to learn more and to begin to consider what an opportunity such as this could look like for Cobb County. That same year, the district also made their first Career Academy presentation to the board, and a College and Career Ready Summit was held to help inform the direction of this work. In 2013, the district sent a team to visit premier college and career academies around the country to gather more information and determine which model might best meet our needs, and the first Community Advisory Committee was held to determine next steps. As we rolled into 2015, the Cobb Chamber of Commerce also began their Workforce Partnership Project, of which the district was a participant. Their report focused on identifying the immediate and long-term workforce needs of the county. In 2016, the district provided another board update on the progress of this project. Similar to the Cobb Chamber, we partnered with the Carl Vinson Institute out of the University of Georgia to facilitate a similar planning and design process with the Career Academy Academic Design Advisory Committee, comprised of teachers, industry representatives, members of the chamber, and post-secondary partners. Out of that committee's work came the final report, which you have been provided a copy of at your seat. In 2017, the Career Academy Academic Design Stakeholder Summit was held, where over 75 local businesses and education representatives came together to discuss the critical elements needed in a state-of-the-art Career Academy experience for students that would also best meet the needs of our workforce. This year, we have been working closely with our post-secondary partners to identify dual enrollment and industry certification opportunities that students at the Career Academy will also have access to. Additionally, the district has spent significant time collaborating with the Georgia Department of Education and industry partners on the architectural design that will meet state requirements and simultaneously reflect essential industry standards and experiences. The end result being a state-of-the-art facility designed and located at Osborne High School. The result of this multi-year process is this new facility scheduled to open in August of 2020, at the same time that the majority of the current Osborne classroom rebuild is scheduled to be completed. This view is from the Windy Hill address entrance. With that being said, we'd like to spend a few minutes providing an update on the status of the pathways that will be offered, and most importantly, what the student experience in the academy will include. As you may recall through previous board presentations, the early work done in this process helped to identify what pathways would be offered at the Career Academy. Based on an analysis of Cobb County's workforce, needs currently and in the near future, as a result, 3 pillars were identified: maker industries, emerging technologies, and healthcare services. Within each of these pillars are the related pathways students will have the opportunity to choose from based on their interest and aptitude in certain areas. Within the maker industries, the pathways include automobile maintenance and light repair, carpentry, electrical, HVACR, masonry, plumbing, and welding. Listed below those are the associated industry certifications, diplomas, or degrees students will have an opportunity to obtain by the time they graduate, based upon the academic design that has been developed for the Career Academy. In emerging technologies, the pathways will include cybersecurity, networking, and energy and power. It is worth noting that the energy and power pathway is a relatively new pathway for the state and will entail a slightly longer runway for us to open. So while the space has been planned and accounted for in the building, this pathway will not open the first year that the academy opens. Again, though, the industry certifications associated with the 2 that will are located below. And finally, the healthcare services pillars. Students will be able to select from clinical lab, emergency medical responder, patient care, phlebotomy, and surgical technology. And the associated certifications are again provided below. It is particularly exciting to note that students who complete these pathways by graduation are not only positioned to begin a great career in the medical field immediately upon graduation, but for those students who wish to continue their education, they are positioned to be able to earn their LPN, or Licensed Practical Nurse certification, within just 3 semesters after high school. Our post-secondary partners, especially Chattahoochee Technical College, has been instrumental in helping us identify ways we can partner to provide students in the Career Academy these opportunities and resources that have the ability to positively change students' lives forever and benefit our community. Now that we've had an opportunity to review the journey that has brought us to this point, and we reviewed the pathways offered to students through the Career Academy, let's transition into how all of this comes together to shape and inform the student experience at the Career Academy. At the core of the Academy and student learning experience is classroom instruction, as you know, which is based on the Georgia Department of Education curriculum standards. Every student will have access to a personalized learning experience where learning can be contextualized and made relevant. For example, imagine Spanish 1 being integrated into a healthcare pathway to benefit that individual as an employee in communicating with potential clients and customers. Imagine also that applying standards and knowledge to case studies relative to the pathway they're in makes learning relevant. There'll be opportunities for blended learning, field trips, flexible scheduling, and core academic choices, meaning students will have the flexibility to choose courses that best meet their core course academic needs while pursuing pathways related to their interests and aptitudes. As recommended by the Cobb County School District CTA Advisory Committee, the Academy experience will employ the Georgia BEST framework for developing employability skills to best meet the needs of business and industry. The Georgia BEST curriculum assists students in obtaining essential skills related to attitude, teamwork, punctuality, and dependability. And finally, there will be ongoing meaningful student, teacher, and industry collaboration throughout the learning process. In addition to the relevant and hands-on learning instruction, students will receive training and instruction in their pathway on industry-grade equipment, meaning we've looked at what the state requires at a minimal level, but we've met with our industry partners to say, is that at a level that our industry partners would be using a similar piece of equipment? And if the answer is no, we've partnered with them to make sure we have the right equipment beyond minimum specifications. Our industry partners have been instrumental in helping to assure that the equipment and the experiences we plan for the academic design are current and relevant within their industry. Dual enrollment. Part of the student experience of the Career Academy also includes opportunities for dual enrollment. As you will see in the academic design draft resource you have been provided, students will have access to dual enrollment courses leading to industry certifications and/or post-secondary credentials. For example, if you look in your resource under the first tab, automotive is the first pathway. If you flip to the back side, you will have a course sequence that looks similar to this. Note the student completes traditional 3-pathway courses by the second semester of their sophomore year. From there, you will see courses outlined in green, where they are taking dual enrollment courses through Chat Tech that enable them to earn industry certifications, diplomas, and degrees beyond what would traditionally be earned. We have worked with our post-secondary partners to leverage innovative delivery models that can be delivered on the campus of the Career Academy so we can reduce barriers that sometimes limit a student's access to dual enrollment opportunities and resources. Work-based learning is another critical component of the Academy's learning experience. There will be an opportunity for ongoing work-based learning or industry experience. All students will have an opportunity to participate in work-based learning, which may include placement in a youth apprenticeship, internship, or a job shadowing experience. These experiences will provide students an authentic learning experience whereby they learn to apply the knowledge and skills they learn through classroom and library instruction to real-world industry experiences. This type of experience will be invaluable to students in their careers and to employers looking for a workforce that has the knowledge, skills, and employability they are looking for. Finally, all of the students in the Career Academy will have an opportunity to participate in active career technical student organizations, or CTSOs as we refer to them. Through events such as Skills USA for plumbing and HOSA, or Health Occupation Students of America for healthcare students, students will be able to participate in regional, state, and national titles, as well as develop the leadership, soft skills, and responsibility needed to be successful in any career and in life. So what do all of these critical components look like within the context of a student's experience day to day? Let's take a quick look at what the key components of the Career Academy learning experience can include as a student moves from the 9th grade through their 12th grade year. Some key points to note in the experiences listed in the gray boxes. The Career Academy allows students to continue to take the core courses that best meet their academic needs. For example, you may have a student whose math aptitude is best served in an AP Calculus course. You may have a student who's the same grade, but their needs are best served in an Algebra 2 course. Students will have the flexibility in their core courses so that appropriate differentiation can be provided regardless of the pathway they have selected. Secondly, our industry partnerships will play a vital role in ensuring our Academy students are engaged in relevant, engaging, deeper learning through industry case studies, field trips, job shadowing, and mentoring. And additionally, flexible learning models will allow students more work-based learning time. For example, instead of waiting until their senior year, students will be able to access work-based learning earlier and for potentially longer periods of time so that we do our best to keep students engaged in school and in the learning process until graduation. The following 2 slides give you a look at a student experiences as students matriculate through their high school experience in the Academy. The first being a sample experience for a student potentially in our patient care pathway. Notice they are still taking all of their traditional core courses, but additionally, this student is engaged in pathway-related job shadowing experiences, field trips, and case studies. They are also in their second part of their 10th grade year and in the 11th and 12th are accessing dual enrollment opportunities and work-based learning experiences, as well as participating in leadership opportunities through CTSOs. The next sample represents a student experience in the plumbing pathway. You'll notice some of the same commonalities in the area of job shadowing, field trips, and case studies, but I want to draw your attention to the 11th and 12th grades. Through utilization of our district flexibility waivers, we can envision students being able to receive their core content through an online format, such as the Cobb Virtual Academy that falls under Mr. Floresta, 4 days a week. They show up, they're taking their core content, but on the 5th day of the school week, they report to their industry experience for a full day of industry-related work experience. In the area of plumbing, there are various stages, and when you get to journeyman, that's where the highest pay is and wages associated with that experience. This opportunity would allow students to accrue hours of experience needed for increased pay differential that oftentimes they have to wait until they are full-time employees after graduation. In this model, we want to approach flexibility so that students are prepared as they graduate to be ahead of the game versus just getting started. As you can see, the district is committed to ensuring that the Cobb Career Academy is a state-of-the-art facility that offers students innovative, hands-on learning experiences and career opportunities through very strategic and intentional district, post-secondary, and industry partnerships. In closing, I'd like to share a few pieces of logistical information that I suspect may be of interest or where there may have been some information shared or published that may have generated some questions or confusion. First, we often field the question, how many students can attend the Cobb Career Academy? The Career Academy has a capacity of approximately 500 students. We're often asked, where will a student complete their academic courses? Students will be full-time Osborne High School students. This means they will accomplish both their core and their CTAE coursework as an Osborne student, though they may be able to access that additionally through CVA and dual enrollment, as you've seen in the academic design. We're asked, what are some benefits of attending the Career Academy? Industry-recognized certifications, CTSOs, honor societies related to their career pathways, advanced placement opportunities, dual enrollment, work-based learning opportunities that are easily accessible and intentionally supported through the academic design. Another question, who can attend the Cobb Career Academy? The Cobb Career Academy will be open to any rising 9th grader. Although we do envision as we grow the program, the first year we open, that we will target 9th and 10th grade students because we have looked at ways to collapse the experience so that we can offer it to more students. I would also like to note that there are 2 pathways that are currently at Osborne that will move into the Career Academy. So you will also have potentially juniors and seniors who are in those pathways now at Osborne that would transition into the academy. But as capacity grows and the demand becomes greater, we envision that rising 9th grade students from across the district will be the ones to apply. I do think it's also exciting to note that in the future, we're looking at summer learning possibilities. How do we open up this facility when it's not used in the traditional 180 days of school? So that students who do want to have access to this incredible experience and these pathways with industry-grade equipment and mentors, but they're not ready to commit to leaving their home school and attending anything like one of our magnets or the academy, would have access through a summer opportunity. But I won't get ahead of myself. Again, that is something that we will investigate further as we get a little closer to an appropriate time. Finally, we're often asked, will bus transportation be provided? The answer to that is yes. Transportation will be made available, similar to what you may be familiar with related to our magnets. Students will have access to a centralized drop-off and pick-up location. It will not be door-to-door, however, as you may be accustomed in your neighborhood school. Before concluding, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to recognize the remarkable leadership behind the work you have seen represented here. I have the privilege of sharing the story with you today, but it's the hard work of an incredible team of amazing leaders that have done the heavy lifting and work associated with bringing this vision to fruition. This work has been led by the following team, and I'd like to ask that they stand and be recognized if they are with us. Kelly Metcalf, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Dr. Felicia Angel, Director of Instruction and Innovative Practice. Jackie Brown, CTAE Supervisor. Dr. Alvin DeQueer, CTAE Coordinator. Dr. Saf Espinoza, CTAE Coordinator. From our SPLOS department, who is responsible for all the work associated with the construction and the architectural design and working closely with us, Mr. Nick Parker, our Senior Executive Director of SPLOST. Annette Wynn, Director of SPLOST. Matt Shettle, Program Manager for SPLOST. I would also like to recognize our partners at Chattahoochee Technical College, who have been essential in this process and continue to partner and support us in every step of this work. Ms. Jennifer Nelson, Vice President of Student Affairs, and Ms. Linda Hazlip, High School Initiative Consultant with Chat Tech. Finally, we'd like to acknowledge the principal at Osborne High School, Mr. Josh Moriel, our incredible CTAE teachers, and our industry and community stakeholders who've served on various committees associated with this work over the course of the last few years. Their time, expertise, and support has been invaluable in this process. At this time, this concludes my presentation, Mr. Superintendent, and I turn it back to you for discussion.
Yes. So let me start out by saying, this has been it's been a minute since we've started down this path. Obviously, this was a SPLOS 4 project, and I know that a lot of people would have loved to see this sooner, but this project was important that we do it right the first time and not do it quickly, so we have to do it again. One of the things that I do want to reference is in Jennifer's, you don't have to go back to the slide, but I think it was about the second or third slide, percentage was up there about 95.2% of our CTAE participants graduate on time. If you recall, back when there was a lot of hoo-ha about career academies and who's doing what differently and better and all that kind of good stuff, the stat was thrown out there that I believe it was 95 or 97% that are engaged in a career academy graduate on time. And the comparison was made to the graduation rate of the state, and that's just not apples to apples. That's pretty much apples to dump trucks, something unaffiliated. But what I want to do is draw out the point that a lot of people acted like that without the Career Academy, we are somehow doing a disservice to students that are more directed toward a career and not necessarily college. And that point shows anything could be further from the truth. With 95.2% graduating on time, and then the number of pathway completers, and then unduplicated students is 36,000. That is a tremendous testimony to Jackie Brown, I'm going to call her out, being over CTAE, because CTAE has been around, okay? That's the old VOTEC. Okay, back in our day, and now it's not Mr. Scamahorn. Not to call you old, but I know you remember the old Voltec, and that was when you would go down to the cosmetology lab to get the free haircut if you were a teacher there. Well, now you can go down to the phlebotomy lab and we'll stick you with a needle and draw your blood. But in all seriousness, I did want to take this opportunity to point out the great things that Cobb County School District and CTAE has already done, past tense. Present tense is already doing, and the Career Academy is simply going to be, another tool in the toolbox to be able to provide every opportunity possible for these students, regardless of what path they're going to embark on after they leave us, and being able to diminish the time that it takes, for example, a student to become an LPN by a year, that's awesome. I mean, that's tremendously awesome. So great job to everybody. I know I called out Jakey Brown, but I like to do that. Great job to everybody for playing the role you have in this, because it has been a minute. But again, on another slide, you saw, I think the timeline you saw, I believe it was 65 or 75 business partners participated in helping to design provide input on what this is going to look like. And again, yes, it's going to open next August 2020, but that's day one. We expect this to evolve. We expect to probably expand it in some way, shape, or form. And that being said, the design of the building has been done in such a way that it has taken into account that expandability for different pathways, if you will, as they come available, and we make them available to those students. So great job to everybody.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lawson. Mr. Scamahorn, you had questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not going to, let me reassure you, I'm not going to monopolize the first go around. So I'm going to have a few things and then we'll wait politely for our second turn. But the first thing I would like to do is acknowledge, again, Ms. Linda Hayslip. Would you stand again, please? Ms. Hayslip? Okay. Thank you. The first time she stood, she did the same thing. She stood up and sat down real quick. She may not recall, but I very affectionately recall my first semester in 1996 as a technology teacher, technology coordinator for Mr. Benny Farmer, a wonderful man to work for and to work with at Central Alternative School. I just came out of the career in the military and thought I knew things about technology, but Ms. Hayslip came down a couple of times and very politely and professionally and pointedly straightened me out on a few things. And I certainly appreciated it then, and I do now. But not to pick on her, but all of you, Ms. Brown, I tend to want to say Linda and Jackie, but in this setting, I try to remember my manners. She too, and those between them, and Ms. Hayslip and Ms. Brown may help me. Eileen, and there's a couple others between there, have done wonderful jobs in getting us to here. I remember us back 20-some years ago now, when we were a voice in the wilderness, trying to get the attention of everybody that wanted everybody to go to college. And we knew back then that only 50% of the freshman year stay for their sophomore year, and only 50% of them go on to the junior year and to senior year and graduate from college. I have firsthand knowledge and could name my friends over the past 40 years that did not go to college, but they went to then called tech schools. Now we call them tech colleges, technical colleges. They were making a lot more money than I a long time before I ever thought about making enough money to go to McDonald's. So I've never understood why every ninth grade parent, or nearly every ninth grade parent, I don't mean this to be a slight, I mean this to be just the way it is, expects their child to go to college. I don't get that. I have a wonderful grandson that graduated from Allatoona last year. He's already an electrician's apprentice. He's already making good money. And he's only been out of high school, about 10 months. And I'm just couldn't be more proud that he's decided, and he's sharp enough, by the time he gets through learning his trade, he'll probably own his own electrical business in about 10, 15 years, maybe sooner, because he's a lot smarter than his granddad. So those are some of the history things. And then to bring us up, Mr. Chair, to a little more history, And every one of us on this board have been around at least 6 to 8 years. I was helping the board before the year or two before I got on the board. And Mr. Chair, to your credit, when you came on board a couple of years after Brad and I, you got right on, you saw the benefit of what the school district was trying to do with this. We had choices to make then. In SPLOST 4, the original SPLOST 4 draft had 2 career academies on it. And like Mr. Adams continues to remind me every time I want stars and the moon, we have $2 billion worth of needs and only about 600 million or less, even though our SPLOST 5 says 700 some million. We don't expect to get that. And I forget now, Mr. Adams, was our SPLOST 4 our revenues expect around 500 million or 600, and hopefully we'll get close to that. But that second career academy was taken off because of lack of funds and more urgent needs for the school district. And I reluctantly accepted that, looking at our entire district. Now, it can evolve to be something else, and maybe it has, but I'm not aware of it. The career academy that happens to be adjacent to Osborne, to my mind, was never meant to be merged and become, quote, Osborne High School. It is a county facility, just like the performing arts facility just happens to be within about 100 yards of Lassiter High School. And it's not the end to end all, because it's my expectations, because of the urbanization of Cobb County, that as soon as we can, I'm going to challenge this school district to get another one started in the northern part of this county. We need at least 2, preferably 3. What size, I'm not going to get into that business, and what should be taught at each one and why, I'm not going to, we're way too soon for that. But what I can tell you, working in a unique school, a Central Alternative School at the time, we've now contracted that out, as the educators know. By the time our students, middle school and high school, got from North Cobb County to South Cobb County off Argo Road, where we were located at the time, they were not happy. They were not happy because they were cold in the wintertime. They were hot in the summertime. They lost instruction time in that hour and a half to get to Central Alternative. And we will have the same issue with a tremendous amount of students that are going to be coming to our academy. So my expectations, and everybody else may disagree, please say so if you do, is we need more than one. Now, that's also, we have more programs, as you indicated, Ms. Lawson, up there, at every one of our current high schools than I had opportunity to go when I was in school. And I basically was on what you might call dual enrollment, although we only had 3 or 4 career and tech. We had the main thing that's done me well throughout my life is mechanical and architectural drawing, drafting. So that is where, and I'm going to hush right now, but I've got a lot more to say on some news articles that have been recently published and on our magnet programs. So, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to get you to walk out on me, but no, I'm just kidding. But I'll yield back, Mr. Chair, until the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scammahorn. Mr. Howard?
Thank you very much. I'm just really excited, Ms. Lawson, and for the entire Cobb County School District. This is a huge accomplishment for the district. This is a huge undertaking, and it's and the level of detail and what's going on here. It's a moment to celebrate for the entire county. So I really want to just say that on the record. I just have a few questions, and you addressed many of them in your Q&A. I do appreciate that. If you could, just in layman's terms, can you describe the difference between this program and a magnet? I know there's similarities, but it's not a magnet, but it's similar to a magnet. Can you do me a favor and try to just break it down in layman's terms?
Yes, sir.
Let me jump out there first, because that's a great question.
Thank you.
And obviously, this was before you came onto the board, but there was some criticism that we were taking initially when we used the term magnet to describe this, and it was just that, a descriptor. And the reason, and it was my choosing, the reason I chose to use the magnet as the descriptor was for one reason and one reason alone: to be able to provide transportation. If it was not going to be a magnet, there was no precedent for allowing any type of transportation to be provided to students that were going to go and attend the Career Academy. By having it structured as a magnet type program, this allows us to do transportation as we do for all magnets. They have, centralized pickup locations and drop-off locations, but it's not door to door. That being said, also, the magnet, obviously, our other magnets have parameters and prerequisites for entering and being accepted. I was very quick to say that's not going to be the same for the Career Academy. But we were structuring it very similar to a magnet. To Mr. Scammahorn's point about being adjacent to Osborne, we did choose the Osborne location, the Osborne campus, to be the location of the Career Academy. And there's potential for, like I just said a minute ago, for expanding it. Now, that being said, again, we had too many people out here speculating. And once something is designed, then there's a lot more specificity. Come on, man. Come on, Brother Morgan. Help me out, man. Come on. There you go, man. Specificity. That's what I said 3 times. Anyway, we can be more specific, as it turns out. So that being said, again, when we open it August 1st of 2020, the first day of school, we're going to have nowhere close to the full implementation of the Career Academy. Now, that being said, we already recognized that Osborne had automotive and construction as part of their pathways on the Osborne campus. So those students will immediately be rolled over into the Career Academy. We talked about what is the capacity going to be, and that is a huge unknown. We can open it up to all the rising ninth graders, and we may have to cut off enrollment. There again, it may be new and unknown, and we may have to go out there and kind of get people to understand, get students to understand exactly what's capable of being done. We anticipate and have anticipated from the start a large injection of students from Osborne High School. Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but graduation rate at Osborne High School is so misleading, it's a crime. It being in the 60s with students that stay their entire high school career, it's in the 90s. Again, this is another tool for those students at Osborne that leave Osborne High School before their 4 years are up. This is another tool to help them be attracted to stay and to be able to show them that, look, if you go through this other alternative path as a career academy, you can come out and you can be a truly certified auto technician and go to work straight to Ed Volz, making a good living. You can go out and work for Superior Plumbing, those kind of things. So that being said, again, to the naysayers on whichever side of the argument that they were on about whether we needed one, whether it wasn't going to serve the purpose and all of these kind of things. Again, we took our time to make sure that this was designed appropriately. We took our time to make sure that everybody was included for the input, specifically the business partners. I mean, this is truly a benefit to them because we're training their future employees, for crying out loud. So we do anticipate and expect them to come to the table with not necessarily an empty plate, but bring a dish. Again, this is one of those things where this is not the end all be all to every student that is not going to choose to go to higher education, whether it be an associate's degree program, a 4-year degree program, or what. But this is certainly an additional opportunity that it's incumbent upon us as a school district to provide for our students. Now, again, to Mr. Scammahorn's point, we may open this thing and quickly be faced with a waiting list. That's perfectly reasonable and reasonable to expect. And then we will be faced to make a decision. Okay, how do we address this? Where are the students coming from? Are they coming from other high schools across the district, or is the main injection from Osborne High School? Those kind of things we'll have to wait to see. And in a lot of instances, patience was not necessarily present for a lot of this, but I think when everybody sees exactly what is going to be on the campus of Osborne High School, it's going to be truly amazing and an awesome opportunity for students. So with that being said, I know I took a long time to explain the magnet, but that's kind of encompassing. It was just a descriptor to be able to provide transportation.
I appreciate that. Just to follow up with the student experience, and again, I know we all draw from our own personal experiences. And as a college student, I'm working at Cheesecake Factory or Don Pablo's to make extra money so I can pay for my books and pay for my gas to get back and forth from college. From what I'm hearing, it is perfectly reasonable to assume that we can have a student who's enrolled at Osborne in the Career Academy taking classes that can prepare the student not only for college, but leave out with the certification. So if they can be enrolled later in a 4-year college, and instead of waiting tables or working at fast food, they could be working on an EMS truck on the weekends. They could be plumbing on the weekends. They can be doing something with a real certification and trade. And that is mind-blowing to me. And it lets me know that this is not your parents' or grandparents' vocational training. This is something incredibly different. And two things, if you could just confirm that that is actually an accurate assumption. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, Dr. Howard. I wanted to take the opportunity, and it kind of answers Mr. Scammahorn as well. This has been such a comprehensive approach around CTAE that there was a time in history when we knew vocational as kind of your shop class. And it didn't entail work-based learning. It didn't entail any integration of the core content, case studies. If you notice in the academic design book that you have, this comprehensive approach in no way shuts any doors for any students. So to your point about the emergency medical responder, if I'm a student and I think I want to be a doctor, because one of the things in education that we deal with is we are talking about 14-year-olds, rising ninth graders or 14. Well, we have an ethic and moral responsibility not to close any doors based on what we as adults think they're capable of, because the light comes on for all of us at different times. So you can have a student who starts and is sitting in all AP classes and they want to be a doctor, and they can go through the EMR pathway and determine that they hate blood and people, and maybe that's not a good occupation. That's powerful knowledge. Or you can have somebody who goes through and they are riding on an ambulance in the night shift and they're going to a traditional 4-year college at the same time. We also know that our students at Chat Tech, the average age, and Linda and Jennifer, forgive me, is either 27 or 29. So one of the commitments we're making to our students from the school district beyond just 5 to 18 is that when these students leave, regardless of whether they ever want to continue secondary education or not, through a technical college, a certification, or traditional, if life at 18 is going to be grand, and some of us by 21 or 22 thought, okay, it's not as easy as I thought it was, we've given them a door that's open to going back to receive more training, more education, whatever they may choose. And that makes the re-entry point into education a lot easier. That benefits our students, it benefits our community. And so we've been very, very intentional, to your point, of making sure whoever chooses this, This is not a track per se, as we used to know about kids who can and kids who can't. We expect all of them to have the differentiation they need, and the pathway is just an aptitude and an interest that they may choose to use for a career or because they just are engaged in that.
Let me jump in too to say this was part of the discussion a little bit ago, but dual enrollment. That's not to say that that's all the Career Academy is about, but it's a huge piece of it. And to give another shout out to all of our higher ed institutions in our county, Georgia Highlands and Chat Tech and KSU. What a lot of people don't understand is through dual enrollment, you can get 2 years of college before you graduate high school, and they're free. Hello? Did everybody hear me? Free. That's what a lot of people don't understand, including books. So to your point about having to work to afford books, and that's how that game goes. But yeah, to be able to get 2 years of college for free, the ROI on that alone is huge, especially in this day and age. To your point about, students today are coming out of college with so much student debt. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Getting 2 years of college free by the time you graduate. And we had a graduate last year from Kennesaw Mountain that literally graduated Kennesaw Mountain and then went over to Chat Tech and got the associate's degree at the same time, same day. Well, maybe a day after each other, but close enough. Close enough for government work, for crying out loud, So that is just awesome. That dual enrollment, number one, is injected into this. And taking it a step further, we've also talked with Chat Tech about the possibility of not necessarily having to have our students go to Chat Tech, but having some professors come from Chat Tech into the Career Academy to do some to do some teaching as well as having the Cisco telepresence to where you don't have to travel. So we're literally thinking outside the box and taking advantage of every single opportunity we can to have these students that are going to be enrolling at the Career Academy truly benefit themselves.
And just, sorry, quickly, this is, as you know, in our backyard, so I have a couple of questions. I really appreciate it. I'm just, again, blown away because I think it's an incredible opportunity. It's so amazing that I think how we market and share this story is very important because it will come alongside a tide of misinformation. And we already have misinformation even among this room about what this is, so hopefully this starts to clarify everything. But can you speak to any game plan to make sure that the proper information is received?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Howard, for your question. What I can assure you is there is a very intentional marketing plan. We reach outside the district for some professionals and experts in that area who will then help us to systematize. So whether that's brochures, media, when we, Mr. Floresta will help us with our social media campaign, getting into our middle schools and making sure. It's also part of the plan when we talked about summer opportunities. We've talked about summer camps for our younger kids who haven't even begun to think about that 9th grade choice yet, and letting them get inside and get their hands dirty and see what this academy has to offer. So yes, sir, once we're kind of here now, but that is where we turn our attention, because really by October of next year, we really start in the full campaign season, as all of our magnets do, in trying to make sure that our community and our kids and our parents know what their options are so that they can make the best selection. So there will be some very intentional time and resources and a strategic plan for that.
Thank you. And nothing happens in isolation. So I think we just heard public comment about capacity concerns. I know this is not specifically your forte, but I don't want to ignore, the elephant in the room. We still have an enrollment kind of issue and the popularity of, people moving South Cobb area. We have to acknowledge the fact that Campbell, Pebblebrook, we have some capacity issues. And Osborne opening up the Career Academy opening at Osborne, that's potentially 500 students at Osborne, which happens to be kind of between Campbell and Pebblebrook. And maybe I'm just speculating, but I can imagine some temporary relief from neighboring schools if people know what's going on, because we're in the middle of a lot of construction, but a couple of 100 students here, 50 here can make a major difference in the entire area. And I don't know if this is the time and place to speak about it, but I would love to hear what the district, the thoughts are when it comes to enrollment and how it affects the area, not just Osborne.
Yeah, certainly. And we will be bringing the demographics update, the annual update. I believe we're scheduled in May, I believe. Obviously the data will be updated this year again, as we have done every year. But to your point, that's an excellent observation. And it's one of those unknowns. It's kind of like, when you open a new building, it's like when we opened Smyrna Elementary School. That school was built before all of our time, in making those decisions, but it was built with 100 student capacity for growth. And it opened right close to full. And within a year to 2 years, it was at capacity. So it's one of those things where you can project and forecast all you want to, but until that building is in place, till the programs are in place, you really don't know. That's why I said we may open the Career Academy and within 6 months have a waiting list. That is certainly plausible and feasible. That being said, though, how we address that is also a decision to be made as well, because to your point, if those students come from Pebblebrook, South Cobb, Osborne, Campbell, that's one of the reasons why we chose Osborne as the location, was because the proximity to the businesses. And the proximity to the businesses also plays into the proximity to other schools. Certainly, if you're closer to a school, driving to that school is going to make a huge difference. I hear parents all the time talking about the length of the bus ride that their students endure to go to Pebblebrook, the magnet. And they do that because of the tremendous leg up, if you will, to go into that industry. We anticipate the same thing for this Career Academy. We're providing these students that attend a leg up to go into not just the entertainment industry as Pebblebrook Magnet does, but to be able to go into many industries. Some of those, as soon as they get that certification coming out of high school, they can enter that world of work prepared. Gone are the days where you can walk up on a construction site and be able to sling a hammer and get a job. Just about every construction job requires some type of certification. And that's one of the industries where there are so many job openings, because students or potential employees don't have those certifications. So being able to have students attend the Career Academy and come straight out of high school and go make a good living until they get to that next step, or maybe they're going to make a career out of that industry they've chosen. That's what we're trying to provide, is an opportunity for those students. Again, to Mr. Gammelhorn's point, a point in time not too long ago where, everybody wanted to act like everybody's going to college. And we just know that's not the case, and we need to provide opportunities for those students that are not going to a traditional four-year college after graduation, and that's certainly fine. But it's our job to make sure that we've prepared them to be successful, as our mission states.
One point of caution, and then I think all of my questions will be answered. I'm a business owner, and technology moves fast, and anytime you're in any kind of career, you mentioned keeping up with the latest industrial technology. I mean, I can spend $20,000 on a piece of equipment this big. I can spend $300,000 on a certain type of image, X-ray or image machine. I say that just for a word of caution as we move and we're trying to keep up with everything. We know with the space that we've accommodated for growth and change and innovation, but also in our budget each year. As technology changes, please let's make sure that we do right by this Career Academy, and not only come out of the gates with bells and whistles, but 5-10 years down the road, we're not going to say, oh, when it first started, we were right on the cutting edge, and then 10 years later, the budget got a little interesting. And we all know that economically, we can go through another downturn, we can have all kind of things. And I say that just to enter with caution, because I know excitement about one thing says, hey, well, we got one, let's make three. Well, let's do really good at one, make sure our money is right before we jump into two. And I just say that from a business point of view and from experience. And again, this is just out of love for our students.
And you mentioned, the equipment in your industry, and part of the Career Academy that we're focusing on is innovation. And perhaps an outcome of that innovation could be pain-free dentistry. How about that? What about that?
Okay, Mr. Banks, and then Ms. Davis, and I am back, and my apologies, Mr. Scamahorn, it wasn't your remarks, it was a higher calling. And everybody else can sneak out of this room without being noticed, but the chair, it seems like. Mr. Wheeler, thank you for covering. My notes tell me Mr. Banks has some comments, and then Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got one question is I want to talk about where we're at right now and what we offer, and then I got some additional questions after that. The paths that are going to be available at the Career Academy, are they going to take away from any of the paths that are available in the high schools?
No, sir, Mr. Banks. As a matter of fact, what I may not have done a good job at the beginning of the presentation was that it is really the sustainability of a very robust and rich CTAE program at all of our high schools and our middle schools, that this becomes an extension. So at no point does this diminish the pathways that are in our current high schools that are serving those students that their needs are perfectly met right there and they're happy. This is just another opportunity, just like we do with our magnets, that may best fit some students around the district, but actually it's meant to enhance. Oftentimes our CTAE teachers are singletons, as we refer to them in a school. They don't have another auto tech teacher to collaborate with on their campus. So if there are pathways at say, Lassiter High School that happen to also be at the Career Academy, they've got a place where some professional learning and support for the Lassiter pathway can happen for that teacher. So if anything, quite the opposite. We expect this to grow, maintain, and support our local school pathways that are already in existence.
Okay. Going back to the demographic study that was done last year for 2019 and 2020, I show in the middle schools we've got 27,534 students projected. And then high schools, we've got 36,513. That brings a total of 64,047. And you have a number of 36,034 that are unduplicated students participating in one of these CTAE paths. That's 56% of high school and middle schools. Is that valid?
Yes, sir, because you have to know that we offer incredible opportunities for electives that won't always be. We have some students that want to spend their elective discretion in foreign language. We have other students that want to spend their elective doing work-based learning that may not be tied to a career pathway course. And so again, it's actually a very, very high number that many students are opting, because electives are just that. That's where students get a little bit of choice. Unlike their core subjects that they have to take. So the fact that we have more than 50% of our students who see a course, that they're hearing good things from students who have taken it, they see a content or something that makes them interested, is actually a very high number. But again, we don't want to ever pigeonhole or force kids into anything. There are different opportunities, and CTAE happens to be one of them that the Cobb County School District offers.
In your presentation, you pointed out certifications in different industries. In our high schools, do they have the same opportunities for those certifications?
You would not be limiting in the sense that if I am a student in a traditional high school and I have taken the automotive pathway, as soon as I get those 3 courses that completes that high school pathway, I, under my own initiation, could look for those dual enrollment opportunities. As we all know, we still deal with children. They are high school age children, and so finding that initiative and all of that is not always easy, and sometimes there are barriers to accessing that. So the Career Academy makes this a very intentional and a very supported process so that we get our students what they need and we make sure that they have access. But to answer your question about could they have access to some of the dual enrollment opportunities, once they finish the prerequisites that, let's say, Chat Tech or Kennesaw or Georgia Highlands would signify, they on their own could solicit opportunities through dual enrollment, but this will provide an opportunity that the entire environment, our counselors, our teachers, the work-based learning is supporting that whole student in making sure that these are accessible and that we support them through that journey.
Okay, now, the Career Academy is considered a magnet level. Is that correct?
It has all the perks associated that you may be thinking of with a magnet. Transportation is provided. We have the ability to bring students in from across the district with choice. So yes, it has all of it. What is different is there's an unprecedented, through SPLOST 4, investment in the academy. Most of the time with our magnets, you'll know we utilize existing space. This has an entire building associated. So there are some novelties, though it does benefit from anything you're considering around the magnets.
Well, my experience from looking at magnet schools, they're generally a higher level academic-wise. Will that be the case in the Career Academy versus a high school where it's not a magnet? Will there be a difference in the quality of the instructions?
Well, I'll answer it this way. I might have had a 4.0. I would have never gotten into the Pebblebrook Performing Arts magnet. And so we don't want to just make grades or your grade point average the only indicator. How many of us in this room, your grades weren't always indicative of your potential, and the light that comes on that I mentioned earlier comes on, and your motivation you find at different points in your life. So yes, we do envision a selection process, but that could be through utilizing resources like we have a U-Science tool that measures aptitude and interest. Students being exposed that I didn't even know that career existed, therefore I would have missed the opportunity to look into it. So things like that could be taken into consideration, but we're not going to limit students that we only want the highest academic performing students, because sometimes a skill being highly efficient at a job, your cognitive isn't the greatest skill that you need. So it'll be a combination, but I can say without a doubt that the experience those students will have in no way mimics what you may be thinking of when we think of vocational ed, because you've got students who are doing dual enrollment who are out in the workplace, and I envision students that want to be physicians coming and doing the EMR and getting through school and learning and being on an ambulance and then being able to apply to the University of Georgia and carrying on traditionally as much as we do a student who is a great emergency medical responder but doesn't choose to go on and be a doctor. So I don't consider the academic design in any way will limit students.
Okay. Now, a problem I see, particularly in Osborne, is transient rate. Have you factored that into the Career Academy success?
Here's what we know about transiency. It's a very, very complex issue, and we recognize that. We as a district, are constantly evaluating the factors that influence that. But one of the greatest things we do know that we do control is the more engaged a student is in their learning. When parents do have choices, and sometimes they really are choices, and if I'm not connected to my school, my child's not connected, I don't feel connected to the community, why not pick up and move? So part of this model is it does impact transiency when students are heavily engaged in their school. They don't want to go, and they have a voice with their parents, and you would be surprised how many parents, when there really is kind of an option, what they will decide to do if they believe they are sitting in a great school with a great opportunity for their child. Most of our parents will do whatever it is they can do to remain there. So we do feel that we are responsible for providing that kind of experience that will address some of the transiency issues that our kids face.
All right. Now, you're talking about in August of 2020. 2020?
Yes,
Okay. What will be the qualifications for a student to be accepted into the Career Academy?
That's some of what I just spoke about, that we now start to turn our attention when we're looking at job descriptions, because we're also talking about bringing in educators who have an incredible experience. We're talking about people who can bring in industry experience and share with our kids. So part of that also coincides with us determining, and of course, we do a national analysis when we look at things. Mr. Ragsdale always charges us with looking beyond the confines of Cobb County and making sure, as he says, we steal the best and leave the rest. So we are in the process of evaluating what other career academies across the country use, and we will certainly customize that for what's best for Cobb, but I can't say at this particular moment what the specific criteria will be, because we just haven't gotten that far in the process.
Okay. Can you go into some specifics on how you're going to staff the Career Academy?
Mr. Adams has worked very closely with us, and so we've determined through these pathways how many staff members it will take and how many students can be accommodated at one time. So we have built that into our plan so that when it comes time to look at the following year's budget, he's got we're running some tentative numbers on what that will cost, but we will start small because we want to be good stewards and because there's a little bit of unknown. You have to wait to see how many students apply and are accepted, and then it has the capacity to easily build. One of the great things about CTAE pathways is oftentimes the first course in a pathway of 3 courses is the same for several different pathways. So students can be sitting in the exact same pathway, and it's not until I branch out into my second and third course. So for instance, in the healthcare services, we will likely have an RN who is the teacher, who is actually qualified to teach all of those pathways that you see in there, and we have structured the facility so that students can use the space and we're able to mimic what's going on in the industry, but the teacher at any given time is able to easily see the kid. So we've thought a lot about that, and we're going to start with what we need, knowing we're bringing freshmen and sophomores, and then we'll grow the personnel from there.
Okay. Now, I'm a strong proponent of robotics. Have you factored in the robotics that we have in our schools now and our clubs? Because I see this as a major industry in the future. And in fact, it could be the point where we could eliminate dentists and have a robotic do it. So can you address how we're doing
That's the Lord talking to him right now.
AI and robotics?
Mr. Banks, I think
I thought I turned that thing on.
I think in part, if you'll look under emerging technologies, and Mr. Ragsdale mentioned that we've been very intentional with the flexibility of the space, but I absolutely can envision that we will have students there that will want to have access to the same type of robotics teams that our CTA programs already support once those students get there. But we've also been very, very conservative with the space, and Nick Parker and his team have been great so that as the future workforce changes and we find out that I envision someday that there won't be any sticks for phlebotomy. They have developed some tool that just touches your arm and draws your blood out, and so we'll have to adjust to that kind of pathway, but we've tried to build the space through the help of our SPLOST department and our architectural design team to inform those decisions so that we, at a fraction of a cost, can retrofit spaces to accommodate what our new workforce will be. And robotics and artificial intelligence and all of that, you're correct, will continue to play a role. But our cybersecurity, our networking, our energy and power, those are also the kids that have an interest in robotics. But I would also argue that our kids over in the maker industries, so much of automotive is hooking your car up to the computer and it flagging what code it's throwing. So I think there is a great opportunity for those students to also have access to some of those robotic opportunities that you're referring to.
Okay, one last question. Right now, the demographics for Osborne shows 2019, 2020 to be 2,878. So you're talking about, on average, 500 students in the academy, so that's about 125 per year. So you're starting out with 2 years. So you're talking about 250, maybe plus, in the first year in 2020. If you draw that many, or half of that many from Campbell, which is right next door, then you take you relieve Campbell, and some of the Osborne is student level is relieved, because what you're talking about is eventually Campbell will be over 3,200 students, counting the school itself and the Career Academy. Am I on the right path?
I hate to speak
Wait a minute,
out
let me
of
make one
turn.
correction, because you said Campbell, but I think you meant Osborne.
No, I meant Campbell. Campbell is right next to it.
Well, not with the Career Academy,
No,
though.
but students from Campbell could go to the Career
Right,
Academy.
yes.
So if they pulled 125 students out of Campbell, that reduces their capacity. If they pull 125 out of Osborne, that reduces their capacity. So now we've got 500, 300 sitting over the first year, sitting over at the Career Academy, which has reduced both schools.
Well, but remember, those students that are in the Career Academy are getting their core subjects at Osborne. So those Osborne students that are going to be Career Academy students will not impact the capacity for Osborne because they're still there.
Yeah, but it runs the number up about 3,200 when you add them all together.
Potentially, and that's what I was referencing earlier when I said that's an unknown. That's what we don't know. We don't know what we don't know yet. Again, we may open this Career Academy and there may be a waiting list within the first week because of all of the people coming. Then again, we may have to go out and sell it, help students understand what that means. So that piece of it, I think we just have to wait and see. It's incumbent upon us to do our due diligence and research to be able to know what the possibilities are. What if this happens, then we're going to do this. But again, I think it's one of those wait and see that we're going to have to see, number one, are we going to reach capacity within a very short period of time for the Career Academy? And then what is going to be the result of that? Or the reverse of that, and that's what we have to wait for.
Well, I will go ahead and project that you're going to reach capacity the first year. And to Mr. Scamhorn's point is, let's say you got 1,000, maybe 2,000 applicants. What are you going to do?
Right.
So we got a problem, we need to be thinking about, okay, if our numbers are that big, and I think they will be, what are you going to do?
Well, I think the takeaway from that of that what if scenario is that would be a good problem to have, because that shows that we're providing the opportunities that our students need and most importantly want. So.
And I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Ms. Davis.
Jennifer, can you talk about the guidance that will be available for students as they choose their pathways? Will there be a dedicated counselor?
Yes,
what
ma'am.
can they get?
We've done a very intentional personnel plan, and so because we want people to specialize in what this looks like around the pathways, there is a counselor. There will be dedicated staff for the Career Academy because it is a district solution. And so the district has prioritized resources that will go with it and specialize in it so that the program is successful and continues to be as robust as we have designed it to be.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm sorry, Mr. Wheeler, then Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Lawson, what's the plan for the leadership of this? Like at Pebblebrook, I believe that the principal, and then we've had Earl Reese and Frank Timmerman ran the performing arts, and that program has been exceptional and is kept that alive. That head of that career tech building or facility is going to be crucial, that we get somebody of the caliber of Mr. Reese and Mr. Timmerman, and that would be to keep that thing continuing to run outstanding. Is that going to fall as like an assistant principal at Osborne, or are we going to have a director, and who's going to hire that person?
We've had some of those discussions, and in order to maintain their attention on what we need this to be, there will be something similar to what we do with our magnets, where there is an assistant principal over the magnet who handles the day-to-day. There will also be a position, more like a director position, whose job with the industries and those partnerships that are critical will remain focused on that. So that is the plan for the leadership structure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, but I'm just curious if that is going to fall under the Mr. Morrell? Or is that going to be somebody from the district's going to appoint that position?
It'll actually be both. So what Jennifer was talking about, the assistant director will be that assistant principal that is on the staff of Osborne, just like we do at all the other magnets, where an assistant principal is over the magnet for that particular school. The director will report to someone in Jennifer's.
We have them co-presenting to both, or reporting to the assistant soup like the principal does, as well as the assistant soup in the academic division, so that we can maintain focus of both the leadership piece as well as the academic design. So the director will report to the same person that the principal does, so that we can have them working in tandem.
And that's brought about because this is something new. So we do have to have that dual reporting because, again, the students in the Career Academy are going to be students of Osborne High School, and therefore leadership at that school has to have a play in the administration of the programs and of the building itself. But at the same time, the director position, because this is a Career Academy, this is not a traditional magnet.
Yeah.
That director position is going to be charged with making sure, as I referenced earlier, the people coming to the table don't bring an empty dish, but they bring a plate. They bring a dish with contents.
Two different things there. That's good. Thank you.
Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I might need a break too, so I'll try to keep it brief. I would like to start out my second time around to sort of like what Mr. Banks does occasionally. I'm going to give a pop quiz. So, thank you. Let me preface that with part of what I've been reading in the Marietta Daily Journal, and this is not directed at Marietta Daily Journal. They can only print what they interview and hear. But in the last week or so, there's been a lot of misinformation in two articles that, you know, it's kind of like when my mom used to grab my ear to get my attention. Well, this misinformation's got my attention. But having said that, if I go back to what Mr. Banks does to us occasionally, how many really know how many magnet schools we have in the county? Off the top of your head, Mr. Daniel, you don't count because you helped me. Okay. Did you say 5?
No, I said I know, but I'm paid to know.
Well, let me help you out. There's 6, only 6. Now, in this article in yesterday's paper, it was quoted as saying, well, every school's got a magnet, but Osborne, woe is us. There's only 6. Now, other schools have emphasized programs, maybe you want to call them academy, a few others do. Only 6. Here's my second question, Mr. Banks, not for you per se, but like you give us. Of those 6, where's the majority of them located? Crickets? I didn't know either. Let me help you here. Campbell High School, Pebblebrook High School, South Cobb High School. The majority of them are in South Cobb. Now, part of this is to dispel the misnomer that South Cobb's been neglected, okay? Now, the other 3, one is at North Cobb, the other one is at Wheeler in East Cobb, and then, even though it's in my area, it's more central Cobb, is Kennesaw Mountain High School. 3 of them are in South Cobb. So this article is absolutely misleading. The other thing is, right in the first paragraph after Superintendent Chris Ragsdale says, plans for a career academy at Osborne have been in the works since Cobb approved $29.9 million for the project in 2013. Well, that's misleading too. We didn't approve $29.9 million for that academy. We budgeted 29.9, not knowing in 5 or 6 or 7 years what the cost would be. Budgeting is not approving a certain amount. Mr. Johnson, you may correct me if am I wrong in my statement.
You are correct.
Thank you. So words mean something, and they also shape people's opinions, as we all know. Okay, and we've been alluding to this. In the next paragraph, it says, the district has said the new Career Academy will operate as a magnet program. No, we'll operate as like a magnet program on some of the things like transportation. To go on to say, to focus on science, technology, engineering, math, and other skills. That science and math are the core curriculum that we all have to graduate from high school. Ms. Lawson, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
This is not a school where we're going to push, quote, engineering level courses. Am I correct?
There could and someday be a pathway, but no, sir, it is not similar to
Correct.
Wheeler or Kennesaw Mountain.
What I don't want students that are an average student that know that they're not going to go to college, but they're looking for something, as you said, to latch on to. I don't want them scared off. I want them to know, hey, I want to try automotive. I want to try electronics. I want to try plumbing, whatever. So, and I'm not going to go through this, but you may not be able to see, but most of this article I've got underlined that I've got issues with, and I provided a copy of this as well as the magnet schools to all of our board members, so they would have copies of this. Let's see here, I've got so much to here. And incidentally, for those that don't know, career in tech, for lack of a better word, that's my first love. I started in that. I was in career tech. When I was in my undergraduate work in electronics engineering, we had a wonderful department chair at Indiana State University. It was a small department at the time. He had gotten it off the ground about 6-7 years before I got there. It's a huge department now. But that man went out, Dr. Leland Moore, again, another fine gentleman like Ms. Linda Hayslip and Jackie Brown. He'd go out 2-3 times a year, and he would canvass industries to make sure we were relevant. To Dr. Howard's point, back then, Dr. Moore would tell us, if you do not update your information every 3 to 5 years, you'll be irrelevant in your career field. Now that's probably every, 6 months to 18 months you've got to update your career. So no, we can't put something in there and then wait 5-10 years to say we're going to change it. If I could ask you a question about what's in here.
Yes.
Toward the back, there's some, let me find it, some sketches. I think it was in this one. Pardon me for.
Looking at page 56.
Yeah,
Hand sketches.
52, 53, 54, 55. Oh, I had it indexed and then lost it. Can you help me out with that? Why, is that for me to color?
It could be, if you choose, but actually as part of the Carl Vinson Institute facilitating, we really were charged with stepping outside of what our traditional opportunities are and to start envisioning what could be for students and a student learning experience that is centered around these pathways and that is highly engaging, in which pieces of a more traditional approach would not be appropriate for the Career Academy. And so honestly, those are just some of the people that were on the advisory when we were tasked with different brainstorming and collaboration with thought partners on the advisory to jot down what we thought was important. And that work helped to guide where we ended up in describing what an academic design for a Career Academy student would look for. So those are just quick notes and sketches in activities that they conducted with the group.
Okay. I heard what you said, but I don't think I heard what I needed to hear. What do you want me to get from these sketches?
These are really, if you read what's before or after, it'll kind of tell you some of the work. Those are examples of where Carl Vinson, not only did we have a facilitator, but we had somebody there who would record discussions and take the artifacts back and then compile them all in a very thorough report that would kind of guide where we needed to go. So if you look on the pages, I'm on page 47, you know, what should we consider when planning facilities? What are early planning considerations or challenges? In order to do a very thorough and comprehensive job and to not only recreate what we already know are options in our schools that are solid already, this has to be a slightly different experience. It's a choice that a student chooses to go to. Some of these drawings that you're referencing are just artifacts that when the University of Georgia compiled what they heard in discussions and what they took back from some of the sheets that we did work on, they're just giving you a sampling of where some of these conclusions came from.
Okay. And then I think I'll save some for tonight, but the other thing I would like, referencing back to updating our information, one of the things that, in fact, it was the first time that Ms. Hayslip came down and introduced herself in person to me at Central Alternative. I had modules or projects, if you will, for those that don't know exactly what the modules were, that were being DOS driven or Windows 3.1 driven, 3.0, I'm sorry. And I was having difficulty to get my students on those computers to work different things, whether it was AutoCAD or the wind tunnel or whatever, because in their homes, they already had Windows 95, and we were going to Windows 98 before we went into Windows the Millennium, whatever they called it. So when I was probably inappropriately pressing her for the updated computers and whatever, I think she finally got frustrated with me and came down and talked to me and gave me a better understanding of the limited budget that we have in education. So we do have that parameter to keeping our things updated and trying to stay abreast. But with this, as I understand, and you can help me with this, is we've got industry partners that are going to help us with this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's the vision. To Dr. Howard's point, we'll have to budget what are our expenses, but those industry partners will be critical that as they inform what they want our students to have access to, we'll be looking for those sponsors and partnerships that we want to provide it. We will need their support and assistance in making sure that it's up to date and current.
And finally, to give everybody some relief, this is my last question / comment. I glanced through here. I may have overlooked it, but it was on the behind the first page here. We're listing the Cobb County School Board Administration, Cobb County School District College and Career Academy, and that's great. But I was hoping to see what industry partners or what industries helped put this together and bring us to where we are now. Did I overlook that?
No, sir, but at the time, remember the Cobb Chamber had a workforce development group, and so Holder Construction, Superior Plumbing, all of those that came to the table as a K-12, our post-secondary, were informing this. Specifically, most recently, I can tell you when we got to the architectural design of the learning space and what the state required in it. Most recently, we met with Holder Construction and C.W. Matthews to say, what do you see in here? We've met with Bill Brantley at Ed Voiles, where the space is modeled after. So we've actually made some significant changes to some equipment and some things that are considered industry standard based on their influence in looking at the design.
Is C.W. Matthews going to give us that $250,000 backhoe simulator?
We're working on it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamhorn. Thank you, Ms. Lawson. And we need to move forward.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to ask Brad Johnson to come up and start with the budget update. And as he's doing so, let me kind of introduce this. We're going to have two focuses on the budget this year. One is increasing the allotment pool to make sure that we are in the position to be able to provide the necessary allotments to all schools. and two, to focus on pay raise and maximizing that pay raise for every employee. It has certainly been a huge benefit that the governor has recommended in his budget and seems to be approved. A $2,775 raise that was stepped down from $3,000, which was obviously stepped down from $5,000. But that injection of funds, it went back up. Well, that's hot off the press. Thank you for sharing that. At least it didn't go down. We'll always take it went up.
I believe the Senate was today trying to put that number back up.
That's why I didn't say his budget was approved, because it's not been approved yet. So to that point, that's great news if they're increasing it, and we'll pass that along. So that being said, again, just as we have done in the past, we're going to maximize that raise for every employee across the board. So that means some definite creative budgeting for financial services, which they are always very capable of doing. We won't get into the numbers today, obviously, because just as two of you have provided input, those numbers are still changing. The digest growth always comes in after the fact and those kind of things. But that being said, I did want to say those two focuses, and also this is very important. I will not be recommending a bonus this year for any employee. And you remember last year we differentiated between full-time employees having a bonus of additional days off of work during the 4th of July week, and then everyone less than 240 was going to get, I believe, at 1.1% bonus. That is not going to be my recommendation this year, because I'll remind the board that the first time we started the bonus was the year that we could not afford a raise. Now, we did get very positive feedback from employees about the bonus, and I took that into consideration greatly. But I believe, and the numbers will show that this is accurate, it's best for the employee to maximize that raise, because the bonus does not count toward TRS, because it is a one-time bonus. It's not part of salary. By focusing and maximizing the amount of raise we can give, that is in fact benefiting the employees more because of the TRS impact that raise will have. Now, that being said, another kudos to financial services. Part of the new financial software package application allows employees to not payroll, but direct deposit into two accounts now. So if the employees so desire, they can kind of by their own volition choose to have that direct deposit, so it creates, if they want to use part of that raise, if you will, to create their own Christmas savings account kind of thing. So that is a tremendous benefit that's been provided by financial services. But all that to say, and I did get input from teachers. This was not a decision made in a vacuum, and it was unanimous from the group that I polled and had the conversation with, and it was that the biggest benefit is for them to be able to maximize that raise. So that being said, that's going to be the two focuses of this budget. You will not see any more budget enhancements. That we have just not had those discussions, or not going to. It's going to be focused on increasing the allotment pool and maximizing the raise for all employees. And again, tremendous benefit from the state. I can't say enough about that injection of funds is playing a huge role in us being able to do a lot this year with the raise. So with that, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Board. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Board, Mr. Superintendent. Each year, one of the biggest strategic management tasks of the districts that they undertake is the annual budget development process. This is a process where we take a planned, organized series of steps to prepare the general fund budget. And when we talk about money in a school district, it all starts with creating a budget. Basically, a budget is an estimate of the money we think will come into the district next year, and then we prioritize how we will spend that money based on what the district thinks is important to educate students. This sounds easy in theory, but in practice, we are talking about an elaborate sequence of events, tasks, and meetings which result in decisions about money. So today I have a series of slides to talk in general about the current year budget and some preliminary information regarding the 2020 budget on things that we know so far. So if you would look at the first slide, actually the first two slides presents a variety of budget metrics that I think you all need to know. First, on this current slide, at the top part of the slide, you can see the current year budget where we started with budgeted revenues and budgeted expenditures, and you can see that we used $7.8 million in fund balance. After the budget was passed last year, we saw that the property values in Cobb went up further than we estimated, according to the tax assessors, and so we yielded $9 million more in money. So we increased the raise last year from 1.1% to 2.6%. So all that extra money went to the employees. Further metrics on this slide, you can see 4 sections at the bottom and things that you need to know. The original revenue breakout for the general fund, you can see that half of the money goes to the state of Georgia, comes from the state of Georgia QBE revenue on the left side. About half of the money comes from local property taxes, and less than 1% of the general fund comes from federal sources. Obviously, we get more federal money in state grants and federal grants, but this is the general fund. Furthermore, on this slide, what's included in the general fund budget, we had a 2.6% raise in the current year, a 1.1% bonus, a decreased work year for 238-day employees, and a full step for all eligible employees. And that full step is very meaningful because that can range from 1.5% to 3%. On the right-hand side of the bottom, you can see 2019 expenditure metrics. Things you need to know that is very helpful. 92% of the general fund budget is for salaries and benefits. Very labor-intensive industry that we work in, but that is very common and that's very typical for a school district. Instruction makes up 72% of the general fund budget. That is a very good percentage for school districts. Typically, over the years that I've worked in this industry, anything over 60% was good. So we're doing real well in that metric. General administration makes up approximately 1% of the general fund budget. So we're putting money into the classroom and we're minimizing support costs. And then lastly, at the bottom, we have basic budget metrics. So the cost of a 1% raise for all employees is $9.5 million. The cost of a step for all eligible employees is $12.5 million. The Cobb teacher salary supplement range above what the teacher funds on the state salary schedule can range from 20 to 27%. So like most Metro Atlanta school district, we have to pay more than the state pays to be competitive. And then finally, a metric that I very love to say is that if we're off in our estimates by 1% and we have a $1.1 billion budget, we might be off by $23 million. So that just gives you an idea of the scope of the budget that we're dealing with. So next slide, please. Next slide is some information about the millage tax rate. Our current millage tax rate is 18.9 mils. The state by law has a 20 mil cap. So we're 1.1 mils under the 20 mil cap, and that gives us some flexibility in case emergencies or whatever that we would need. The debt service millage rate has been 0.00 mils for a long time now. In fact, we've been long-term debt-free since 2007. So that is an extremely great accomplishment by the district and the board and the superintendents over this time period. Further down at the bottom, you can see the district's credit ratings. And just a few comments about credit ratings, because we have the very highest long-term credit rating, which is a AAA credit rating from Moody's Investment Service. We also have the very highest short-term credit rating from Moody's Investor Service. So a couple comments about credit ratings. Credit ratings represent the credit worthiness of corporations and government entities where investment professionals assess the likelihood that a debt can be paid back. These ratings play a key role in borrowing costs and are also an indicator of an organization's skill and experience with regard to not only financial operations, but also just general operations and how we manage the district as a whole. Our district is one of the few organizations, schools, school districts, or corporations in the entire country that have a AAA rating. In fact, there are only 2 U.S. corporations left that have a AAA rating, and those companies are Microsoft and Johnson & Johnson. So we are in very elite select company in this financial area. Additionally, there are only 15 states left that maintain a AAA credit rating, and only 0.5% of public school districts in the country have a AAA rating. And in fact, if you keep track in the news, the United States doesn't even have a AAA rating yet anymore. So we're in very good company, and our finances are doing very well. Next slide, please. This slide is a summary of recent budget accomplishments and things that we've been able to do in our budget over the last several years. You can see the different things we've done in 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And in most of those years, we've been able to do a full salary step. That's extremely important. Like I say, a salary step can range from 1.5% to 3% for employees. We have added teachers in various years when we could in the budget. We have done salary increases during those years. In fact, in 2016, we had a 4% salary increase. In 17, we had a 2.5% salary increase. And in 19, we had a 2.6 salary increase. So we've done pretty well with the resources we have, especially coming out of the economic recession that we were in. Next slide, please. This slide talks about how we prepare the budget and the steps in budget development. And on the screen today, I have a summary of budget development activities. In the first area at the top, you'll see all the things that go into the budget. And you as the board don't see a lot of these very detailed tasks that we do, but we actually meet with every budget administrator. Every budget administrator has a series of accounts that are assigned to them. We review those accounts with them. They look at them, they're reviewed, they're signed off. We do a preliminary budget forecast. We gather budget balancing information from all over the district, from schools and departments, and also external entities outside the school district. We prepare, have a very elaborate personnel allotment process that we work with, and that's very important to the budget because, as I said, 92% of the budget is people. We prepare operational department projections. We prepare revenue projections. And we prepare all the revenue and estimates for other funds. And if you look at other funds, and we'll talk a little bit about other funds during the budget process, but we have $100 or $200 million in other funds, which are mainly federal and state grants. So there's a lot of things going on as we prepare the details to the budget. And those are all the things that got us to this day today. So a lot of things been happening. I would note that per state of Georgia law, it is the superintendent's responsibility to prepare a balanced budget first and then submit it to the board for your review, your consideration, and then ultimately your final approval. We have other things that are going on during the budget process. We are very interested in legislative activities that are happening down at the Capitol. There are a lot of bills in the House and the Senate that impact education, impact K to 12, and impact the Cobb County School District. So we try to take all those things into account as we prepare the budget. In the coming months, March, April, and May, we will be looking at the budget. In fact, we'll be bringing you a detailed budget at the next board meeting in April. Very important thing to say and note on this is that, yes, we would like to start the budget process earlier, but what happens is that we don't have a lot of the information that we need to create estimates that you can count on until the month of late March or early April. For example, we don't have the final Property Digest growth estimates yet. They will give us an estimate at the end of March, so we'll have something to go on. But even then, they don't finalize those digest growth estimates until the beginning of July. So ultimately, we'll have to approve a budget before we have that final estimate. But we do have a history working very closely with the tax assessor. Those are good people down there, and they give us pretty good estimates. The other thing that we're waiting on is the legislature to complete. And you'll see later on in the presentation, half of our revenue comes from state of Georgia QBE revenue and grants, and the other half is property taxes. Well, the Georgia legislature hasn't completed their proceedings yet, and so that doesn't really end up until sometime in April that we get good estimates to rely on. So that's why we wait until April to look at final estimates and then present those to the board. And then, of course, we're going to have, we have planned public hearings for Cobb citizens. We have 2 of them planned in the month of April and May. And then we're finally scheduled to have a final approval of the budget at the end of May. Okay, next slide, please. Like I said, the 2 major general fund revenue streams for the general fund is state and local revenue. And let's just talk about state revenue first. You can go to the next slide. So many of you have heard about QBE revenue. Well, that's an acronym for Quality Basic Education. And the Quality Basic Education formula, actually it's a series of formulas. It's not rocket science, but it is a lot of formulas. And it's a lot of formulas that are compiled, and then ultimately the numbers are added up. And then when they complete the number that they give us, they divide it by 12 and we get 1 check a month. And so it seems simple. It's simple in theory, but it's almost data overload to compile all those formulas. Basically, the metric for QBE formula is the student counts. So there's a student count in October, and there's a student count in March. Those counts are extremely important for half of our funding. In fact, we go to great lengths working with Sherry and the schools to make sure that those kids are counted in the right program. Every QBE program is weighted: kindergarten, grades 1 to 3, grades 4 to 5, grades 9 to 12, special ed, all types of different programs. Each program may cost more or less than another program, and the state of Georgia weights each of those programs. Programs like special ed cost more than other programs. So if we're not coded right, we're going to lose a lot of money. And we go to great lengths to make sure that we count those students in the right area. QBE is funded with the formulas using base amounts. So what they'll do is they'll use a base salary amount and multiply it times the student counts in the weighted areas for all the different instructional areas, and then we'll add all those up. And then added to that base amount, there'll be a factor that's called training and experience. So we submit files to the state that really takes all of our employees, and they look at what is our educational experience and what is our years of experience, because all the salary schedules are based on that. And so they give us a factor that we can apply. And then, of course, that's the grand total of what the state thinks it costs to educate students in Cobb County. Then finally, they will take out what's called a local fair share amount from that amount, because we're supposed to be a partner with the state in local funding. So they'll deduct that local fair share from our amount, and then that residual will be the state amount. Now, there are some factors that affect QBE funding. So the next slide. This slide shows the QBE revenue local fair share. And you can see on this slide, since 2001, the local fair share has gone up from $76 million to a current year total of $155 million. Now, what is local fair share? Local fair share is 5 mills on the 40% equalized property tax digest. So they're saying that we have to levy at least 5 mills before they'll give us state revenue. That's why they deduct it from the state revenue, because we're supposed to raise it on the local side. Now in Cobb County, we have a factor that impacts that because we have local exemptions in Cobb County that some other districts don't have. One of the biggest local exemptions that we have is the age 62 and over. When the state figures local fair share, they do not count that our local exemptions in their figure. So instead of allocating to us a reduction of 5 mills, ours ends up being 6.4 mills. So that's a big mitigating factor when they compute state revenue. Next slide, please. This next slide is an issue that doesn't impact us going forward, but I continue to like to present this information because it gives everyone a sense of where we've come from. Because in the midst of the economic recession, the state started allocating austerity cuts to all government entities and state entities and school districts across the state. And you can see these totals. These are very significant totals that the school district has had to navigate when we prepared previous year's budgets over the last 16 years. And it's been quite a challenge to how to balance budgets when we have these types of reductions. And in fact, in several years, the reductions came in the middle of the year after we had already approved the budget. But a number to keep in mind is the cumulative austerity reductions since 2003 are $586 million. So that's over $1 billion that we lost over that time period. I'm not quite sure exactly how we did balance the budget over all those years, but I was here and we did it. I don't know how we did that. But the state ceased to have the austerity reductions in the current year, and we don't see any of those reductions planned in the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. This next slide is the other half of our general fund revenue, and this is local revenue. And you can see I like to present Cobb in comparison to the other major metro Atlanta districts. And here what we try to do is do a comparison on an average priced home in Cobb County. And actually the average price home in Cobb County is actually $300,000 per the county tax assessor. And you can see here that it's not just the millage tax rate that goes into figuring property taxes. It's also a function of the homestead exemption as well. So you have to take both of those into effect. And you can see where Cobb County schools, we compare very favorable to the other districts in keeping taxes low as possible. You might see some of those districts there where they have millage rates that are higher than 20 mills, because I just mentioned there was a 20 mill cap. But that cap was done after they had already had their millage rate and they were grandfathered in. So they're very lucky. They have basically unlimited millage. You can see at the bottom here of how property taxes are calculated for a home in Cobb County. Is very simple, actually. An average, at the bottom, there's an average home price of $300,000. You're taxed on 40% of that value. So 40% of that would be $120,000. You take out the homestead exemption of 10, but you have to apply for that. And then you multiply it times the millage rate or the millage tax rate of 18.9 mills, and there you can see how the property taxes are figured. Next slide, please. This slide presents information on property tax exemptions. So even though I showed you how our homes are taxed in property taxes, there are exemptions to that. And basically exemptions are property in Cobb that is not subject to property taxes. So as you can see from the slide, the impact of these properties that are exempt totals $146 million. That's not assessed values. That's actual revenue that the school district does not get as a result of these exemptions. There's a lot of exemptions, such as homestead, disabled veteran, Social Security disability, unremarried surviving spouse of a firefighter or a peace officer, Freeport exemptions. There's a variety of exemptions. But the largest exemption or the largest proportion of that $146 million that we lose is allocated to the age 62 and older. So Of that 146, almost 112 goes towards the exemption of the age 62 and older. Slide. Okay, let me have some comments about general fund expenditure appropriations. This slide presents how the district has chosen to spend the revenues that we have just talked about. One thing that is important to note is that although we generally have low expenditures per FTE, our test scores continue to be very high, where we are still above both the national and state average. The general takeaway from this slide is that we spend most of our money, obviously, on instruction, and I've highlighted that. And we are very thrifty with other support costs, and I've highlighted all those. And we compare very favorably to the other school districts. And in fact, I took the opportunity to highlight general administration because we're very much lower than in that particular area. But we compare very favorably to every area there. Next slide, please. Another area that's been recently a challenge for the school district budget is health insurance increases over the last 5 or 6 years. And we have had to include in the budget increases, especially for classified health insurance. And you can see in 14, 15, 16, and 17, and 18 that there were increases in those areas. And that was a set of recurring costs that the budget had to absorb. Luckily, in 2019, they ceased to have increases. So in the current year, there was no increase. I have no information that says that 2020 will increase either. So hopefully that's leveled off. But as everybody knows, health insurance is an area that you need to monitor, and it's one of those areas that seems like the costs are increasing. Next slide. Another area that's of very interest to our employees and the school district is the teachers' retirement system, or we call it TRS. And you can see here at the top part of the slide where the percentage, the employer share cost of TRS has gone up over the last several years from 14% to 21%. Basically, the state has covered most of the cost of that, the incremental increases in that, so that's a good thing. We do know for sure that the increase for 2020 will go up from 20.9% to 21.14%. One thing I'd like to mention at the bottom there, you can see the different years going back to 2014 where you read in the paper about different pensions across the country and what percentage are they funded. And you can see back in 14 we were 84% funded, but then you can see the effect of the economic recession where it started to ebb a little bit and it went down to 76%. But one good thing about it is when the TRS closed their books last year in June, the percentage funded of the pension went back to almost 81%, and that's a great thing. This is a solid pension plan right now, contrary to what you might hear, but we're going in the right direction on that. Next slide, please. The last slide I have today is the governor's proposed 2020 budget information. And here you can see throughout the campaign for governor, one of the highlights of Governor Kemp's campaign was a $3,000, or actually was a $5,000 raise for teachers. When the budget came out, he proposed a $3,000 raise for teachers. This raise was adjusted in the Georgia legislature towards the end of January to $2,775 because they wanted to give it not to only teachers but to some other groups as well, like psychologists and counselors and media specialists, social workers, pathologists, and technologists. The governor also is proposed to give a 2% raise for school bus drivers, school nurses, and school nutrition workers. Additionally, with the budget, they gave $92.1 million in statewide funding to provide midterm adjustments to cover increased costs for enrollment in K-12. That's something that happens every year, but I don't take it for granted because we need the growth money for those increased students. And then also there's statewide funding to provide a one-time $30,000 school security grant to each public school in Georgia.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. So since I got updated from Sharice and Clem on the Senate taking up the raise, I've since been updated as I've been trying to garner more information that somehow it's being proposed that that raise be delayed until September. Now, what in the world that means, I have no earthly idea. But the reason I bring that point up is because it bears the point of making, if we had started the budget process and worked the budget to those numbers, we would be having to say, wait a minute, just kidding. Let's back up and see what this really means. So in the meantime, between now and the next board meeting, when we present the balanced budget to you, we will be working to see exactly, number one, what this means, but most importantly, what's going to be the final version that's passed. So again, information that's changing on a daily basis, but certainly impacts our budget.
Well, you're ahead of me because I didn't even know that. That must have happened just today, I guess. Obviously, budget decisions for 2020 have not been finalized. We're continuing to work on estimates for revenue and expenditures. Much is yet to be compiled and presented. But I hope that this gives the board and the citizens of Cobb County at least a starting point or an idea of how this budget's going to start to evolve. Next month in April, it's our plan to present a detailed budget based on what we know, and we'll give a draft to the board at that time. At your desk today is a detailed budget development calendar for your use and review. Please note all of the budget meeting dates and the budget public forum dates and put those on your calendar if you would, and I appreciate it. Mr. Chair, that's my initial comments on the 2020 budget development process. We'll have a lot more detail next month.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Scamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm probably going to raise the eyebrow of our superintendent, but I guess maybe not. I'm going to formally ask that you provide the PowerPoint presentation to all board members, and I'll be glad to send an email if that's necessary.
And I'll do you one better. We always put all these things on the internet for everybody to see. We're totally transparent.
Well, and I think we have a great internet site with all the information, but there's so much there, I don't know if anybody will find it, but hopefully they will.
We'll get it too.
But here's my thing, and each year I ask for what we used to get is the budget forecast sheet, you know, on this size paper. We don't get it anymore. I don't really have I've never got a good reason as to why we don't. But I'm going to ask that you provide that. Maybe the other board members don't want it, but I would like to see it as you've provided to me before.
Okay.
And last but not least, I may be sent to the back of the room, but if you ask me one question about what we just covered, I'm half visual and half literary, if you will. But, you know, I couldn't tell you. I mean, there was so much information, there was nothing for me to follow along and make notes and whatever. But that's where I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scamahorn. Anyone else? Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got 3 questions, and I'll try to be very, very quick about them. Based on the 2017 CAFA, it had an unassigned fund balance of $96,064,000, which was an increase of $21,224 from 2016. That was 28.36%. In 2018, the CAFA had an unassigned fund balance of $109,206,000, which was an increase of $13,142,000 from the 2017 CAFA, which was an increase of $1,368. In the 2 years, the unassigned fund balance has increased by $34,366,000 at the end of fiscal year 2018. The question I have is, where did these additional unassigned funds come from, and why wasn't these funds used to hire more teachers and reduce classroom size?
Okay, Mr. Banks, several things. In the 2016 budget, the board approved the use of $20 million in fund balance in order to budget or assist the funding for a 4% raise. The decision ultimately resulted in the fund balance being slightly under 1 month reserve. So then in the following year, in 2017, the budget was constructed to restore the 1 month reserve at $96 million. And then we strive to maintain 1 month reserve per board policy. In fact, I'd like to have slightly more than that because the budget's getting larger and larger. In the 2018 budget, we budgeted a recurring $5 million surplus in the budget with an accompanying 1.1% bonus. So this decision ultimately resulted in the fund balance increasing to slightly over 1 month reserve at $109 million. So because we currently have a 1 month, or we're slightly over a 1 month reserve, it's very probable that in the 2020 budget, we will utilize this fund balance excess over 1 month reserve to apply it to the budget when we bring it to the board in April. Now, comments from a financial perspective. Every independent financial professional has set the ideal standard in governmental accounting that a fund balance should be 2 months of reserve, and we only have 1 month, or slightly over 1 month. These opinions include GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, the Association of School Business Officials, and our own financial auditor that you heard from back in January when we had the financial audit. I believe the board has had a confidence in maintaining a lower 1 month reserve because of our history and successful estimates. But estimates will be more and more difficult to compile as the budget becomes larger and as the economy keeps rapidly growing. But keep in mind that if finance is off by 1%, we can be off by as much as $23 million. That being the case, if we're going to be off, I continue to recommend a moderate, conservative approach to budgeting so that we end up, if we're going to end up being off, we end up being off to the good.
Let me jump in for a second, too, because one of the things, and it's just been illustrated in the raise information, so regardless of the delay to September or whatever happens, transpires with that, we have always utilized a portion of fund balance in the budgeting process. And one reason for that is we have a focus on when we do a raise, we carry that raise across the board to every single employee. This year is a perfect example of how that will be needed to be utilized because the state is going to provide monies for just those positions identified to get those raises. So that $2,775 or $3,000, whatever it comes out to be, whenever it comes out to be, is only for certain positions. So we will actually have to add greatly to those funds to be able to get that raise at the same percent across the board for all employees, whatever that comes out to be. And again, as I mentioned when we first started this agenda or this update, I'm going to focus on two things. One, increasing the allotment pool, and two, maximizing the raise for every single employee. So whatever we can afford to do as a raise, and most importantly, this is going to be recurring, and we got to be able, to support that moving forward. So that being said, we're going to maximize that. But to your point, Mr. Banks, we always utilize a portion of the fund balance in the budgeting process, and we want to keep that buffer at a safe level. We feel like that 1 month's reserve is that safe level, and at the same time, we also don't want to blow through everything above it in one fell swoop, and then have nothing for upcoming years. So I hope that helps to answer your question.
It doesn't answer my question, but because last year we gave a 2.6% raise and a 1.1 bonus, and we still grew the fund balance. So where did that money come from? That's the question. How did we grow $13 million after all this raise and bonuses we gave last year? So that's my question is, how is this thing growing? Who's not getting money? Is it the classroom is not getting the money? I don't know, but it's coming from somewhere. But now, let me just go on to the second question I've got, because we could spend hours talking about this. Concerning the allotments, there's been some schools that have decreased in allotments, and some have stayed even. Maybe some have actually gone up. Now, somebody has made a decision on the allotments based on a budget that we had not approved yet. We don't even know what it is yet. So my question is, will these reductions that have been made to these schools be restored when the budget is finalized? And when will the hiring process for teachers begin?
Let me throw out a number. And we're kind of getting down into the weeds because we don't know all the numbers, but let me just give this as an example. Every year we grow special ed students. And that is the biggest consumer of additional allotments. And by additional allotments, I mean, for example, since the October FTE count of 2018, okay, last October, our current fiscal year, our current school year, to this day, we have grown over 1,500 special needs students. That's in 5 months. Now, when do we get funded for those students? Not just next year. That would be January of next year, because it's in the midterm adjustment when those adjustments are made. So, because everything's funded in arrears. So, that being said, Sherry has probably, next to financial services, one of the most difficult jobs because she has to bear the weight of the allotment process, and it's not fun. And unfortunately, it's never going to be fun because our budget situation is pretty much not going to change. Special ed, again, and we're not picking on special ed, it's just the facts, that when a student shows up in January with an IEP that says they get a one-on-one para and this and this and this, that's the special ed law. We've got to do that. There is no excuse of, well, we just don't have the money to do that. That's what we have to do. So when we grow 1,500 students from October to March, how many more students are we going to grow from March to August 1st? So when I talk about increasing the allotment pool, it is not just so that come August 1st, as soon as the budget, we're doing hiring fairs as we speak. All right, we've given out contracts in February. So all of those people that got a contract know they've got a job next year. Now, one of the things we have to do that's not pleasant, but we do it because we want to maximize our allotments and IE funds for the district, we have to float some employees. So if a particular school has grown and they're going to get some allotments, and another school has lost students and actually lose allotments, that allotment may require a teacher to move from one school to the other, and we know that's not pleasant. That is never our preferred method of balancing allotments, but with our budget situation, what it is, that's just what we're faced with. So that being said, come the approval of the budget, it's not like, whatever we're going to recommend the allotment pool be based at, it's not like we're going to give 100% of those allotments out. But a large chunk of those allotments will immediately go out for special needs students in all schools. It's not just one school or two schools, it's all schools. So that being said, the allotments, and kind of keeping on the special ed path, to your point, Mr. Banks, about schools losing allotments, the flip side of this, of not increasing the allotment pool and having those allotments be provided to special ed, would be every school losing approximately 2.5 allotments to provide for these allotments needed in special ed. And that's certainly something we don't want to do, because when you start going down that path, now you're increasing class size, you're taking away planning periods and those kind of things, and we don't want to go down that path. So in all seriousness, the allotment process is one of the biggest weights on anyone in the budgetary process, because, again, we're trying to balance need and help the schools understand at the same time we're doing everything we can for everybody. Now, somebody might ask, well, just give a less raise and add some more allotments. And that's certainly an option. That's not going to be my recommendation, because what we need to do is we need to maintain our competitiveness so that we retain the greatest teachers in the world that work in Cobb County. If we don't retain our competitiveness, then those teachers can go to Cherokee, Paulding, Douglas, Fulton, and make a lot more money for doing the same job. So my focus is always going to be on our current employees, making sure we have the best, we attract the best, and we retain the best. So yes, it is an option to say, hey, let's just diminish the raise and put some more allotments in there. But I think, and again, our numbers are not finalized. That's why I'm not getting into numbers tonight. But I think that we're going to be very comfortable with the number of allotments in the pool and the amount of raise for every employee. Now, again, breaking news, this just in, the raise may change. I think the last day of the session is Monday. So I think, right? Monday? Sometime? Yeah. So hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have some concrete level numbers that we can work with. So I hope that helps, because, again, it's so difficult for us to have a budget presentation when we don't have real numbers to present. Now, are we working on it? Yes, we're working on it. We're playing what if with the numbers we have and the numbers we think we're going to get. We're playing what if with that, so it's not going to be like when we get the final numbers, we got to start from scratch. Now, when we get the final numbers, we may have to start tweaking some of those what if scenarios that we've started with. But my focus is not going to change. It's going to be the allotment pool increasing and maximizing that raise for every single employee.
Okay, and I hope by bringing this subject up that we're putting some emphasis on teachers and more teachers. One of the questions I have, will we have more teachers for the next school year than we have for this year? Because our ad valorem taxes are going up, probably going to be over 6%, so we'll get a big boost right there again, like we did last year. Can we get a report that shows us what the anticipated average classroom size will be for each category of schools, elementary, middle, and high school?
I don't know that we can do an average like that. We can tell you maximums and minimums, that kind of thing, but I don't think we can say the average class size for every elementary classroom is X. Can we? If I'm wrong, please speak up.
It would be a range based on the services that students need. So when Mr. Ragsdale talked about the needs of special ed students, we also have gifted, we also have students who receive EIP services. So they're different models, and then we have different waivers. So the range would be pretty broad. But we could share it would be a range.
And this is one of the comments I think all of us get is concerning classroom sizes. We don't want 40 kids in a classroom because we can't put that many desks in there, so they just have to sit on the floor.
And that exact reason is why we're increasing the allotment pool, because do we have a lot of classes that are very, very large? No. Do we have classes that grow and we need to add an allotment to reduce that number? Yes. And that's why I'm focused on the two things I'm focused on, one of which is the allotment pool number, so that we have the ample supply of allotments, not to give out the first day, but after we've sifted everything and leveled everything out, to have those allotments to exactly address those situations you mentioned.
And another reason I bring this up, a lot of the schools have done their scheduling planning for the next year, so they already know exactly how many teachers they need, how many is going to be in the classroom. So they already basically know these numbers. Up our allotment process, I don't know. It's always a battle every year, and I wish there was an easy way of doing it, but I haven't seen one. Now, the next question I got, which is the last one, in February 2019, Mr. Flores provided the 2017-2018 financial efficiency star ratings to all the board members. From this data, I determined the average FTE expenditure by post for elementary, middle, and high schools. The high and low results are as follows. Elementary school, post 3 had the highest expenditure of $10,995. Post 5 had the lowest expenditures of $9,279. And the middle school, post 4 had the highest expenditures of $8,627. Post 6 has the lowest expenditures per FTE of $7,976.
Mr. Banks, we've got to look at the clock and pause this discussion right now, because
I'm almost finished.
we've got to get on the agenda items.
I'm almost finished. Post 3 has the highest expenditure of $8,000 for the high school, $337. Post 6 has the lowest of $79.35. Why is this discrepancy of the different amounts per FTE? And part of my question is it based on the amount of salary that's being paid in a particular school?
Expenditures per FTE, as I said before, 92% of the budget is salary and fringes. So it depends on the education level and experience levels of the teachers at a school. So you might have one school that are new teachers and bachelor's degrees. You might have another school that are 30-year teachers and master's degrees. Well, obviously that school is going to be paying more out in salaries, and it'll look like their expenditure per FTE is higher. That's one reason. Another reason is that some schools are economically disadvantaged, so they get Title I money. So they will have extra money to spend on teachers, so their expenditures will look higher than other schools. Another reason is the subject of fixed costs, because every school has fixed costs no matter if they're a large school or a small school. A small school with the fixed costs, their cost per student will be higher than a large school because the large schools has economies of scale. So I think for those reasons, just a quick answer to your question, I think that helps to explain a lot of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Davis.
Just want to say that I truly hope that we can address some of the concerns that were brought here by bus drivers and our nurses in the next budget. Thank you.
All right. We can have more discussion tonight during the business session.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, what you were trying to say was that it's literally a pause.
Yes.
We could pick up the budget discussion this evening so board members can ask all the questions they want.
Right.
To allow you to get to the
we really
agenda
got to look at the
items.
clock, folks. All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent.
All right, yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Wait, but before we move on, I just want to make sure there's no problem with that, so that the board is okay, and where you want to place that on the agenda for this evening to continue the budget discussion.
If okay with the board, we can put it right after recognitions.
Okay.
We'll have the recognitions and then continue the budget discussion.
Without objection? All right.
All right, cool. All right, agenda item number 1 is the recommendation for authorization of school properties disposal per District Administrative Rule DO-R. That list has been sent electronically. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, consent.
All right, going to ask Mr. John Adams to bring the remaining agenda items.
Thank you, sir, and I will be brief. Agenda item number 2, recommendation for approval of a water meter easement for Marietta Board of Lights and Water for the Instructional Support Center. Marietta Board of Lights and Water is requesting an easement surrounding the fire, domestic, and irrigation meter, essentially a new meter required for land disturbance permit for the Instructional Support Center. We'll recommend that you approve this recommendation to allow the water meter easement to the Marietta Board of Lights and Water at no cost to the district.
Okay, consent? Consent, all right.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3, recommendation for approval to award a contract for a cooler and freezer replacement at Baker Elementary School. As part of SPLOST 5, Baker is scheduled to receive a cooler and freezer replacement as part of food service upgrades. Awarding the contract at this time will allow the project to remain on schedule. Substantial completion date of July 2019. We're recommending that you award the project to Shopman Company, Inc. out of Atlanta, Georgia for $336,590 as budgeted in SPLOST 5, and allow us to execute the contract.
All right, consent.
Agenda item number 4, recommend approval of the endowment-funded project at McEachern High School. We've received a request from the McEachern Endowment Fund for approval to proceed with advertisement and eventual renovation of the existing home ec area into a culinary arts lab. The endowment fund is asking to proceed with the competitive procurement process that's required by state law so that they can begin the renovations to upgrade to a culinary arts lab. And they're asking for permission to start the bidding and then construction process now so that they can have it online and ready to go by the beginning of the 1920 school year. You see the cost listed there, $350,000 with the funding source of the McEachern Endowment. They've done this before in other areas, and we're recommending that you allow the endowment fund to proceed with advertising and receiving bids for the renovation of their culinary arts lab.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scammahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To allay your fears, I recommend consent also, I think. But a real quick question. Since this is funded separately from the county, how do we interact with that to make sure that it meets the state and our standards for instruction?
They work with our standards, and there are DOE standards, more importantly, to be a culinary arts program as opposed to just a home ec lab. So we work with them to provide advice on that. They also get input from the DOE, and then we also give them advice on how to handle the procurement aspect to make sure they comply with state law.
So we'd make sure it was an adequate physical facility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Scammahorn, we'll put that on consent. Next.
And then lastly, agenda item number 5, recommendation for approval to award a contract for the Cobb Career Academy. In accordance with SPLOST 4, the Cobb Career Academy is scheduled as a new facility. We recommend the award in the contract at this time to allow us to remain on schedule to complete the project. Substantial completion May of 2020, obviously to open at the beginning of the 2020 school year. We had 5 bids. We'll recommend you award the project to Carroll Daniel Construction Company in the amount of $14.497 million as budgeted in SPLOST 4. You will recall that this is the same construction company that's doing the current substantial work at Osborne High School. So we're recommending the award in the contract to Carroll Daniel Construction for the construction of the Career Academy and allowing us to execute the contract.
Okay, Mr. Scammahorn? Discussion? All right. Thank you. All right, the administrative rules are on your agenda as FYI items. Mr. Ragsdale.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board, administration has submitted revisions to the administrative rule dealing with the Student Code of Conduct for implementation next school year. Sent that into you for review. I would let you know in your packet there was one change on page 21 that just had to do with inclusion of language coming right from a state statute that legal asked us to put back in. Otherwise, I'm just here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. York. Ms. Davis.
A couple of things. Can you explain the difference between in-school isolation and in-school suspension? And also, how do we try to minimize the subjective nature, of some of these rules? Like for insubordination, all students shall comply with reasonable directions. That's just one example of that.
Yes, ma'am. The state recognizes in-school suspension as an alternative educational placement setting in grades 6 through 12. And there's a special program called ISS for 6 through 12. There is no such state designation for elementary school. In essence, it's the same isolation of a student from the regular classroom for a short period of time, just a different label because of the state. As far as the subjectivity, a lot of that goes toward training of principals and assistant principals. Our director of student support and our discipline supervisor provide training for administrators on the implementation of the code of conduct. And so that really is experience-based, training-based with the administrators implementing the code of conduct.
Okay. All right, Mr. Scammahorn and then Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, Mr. York, and for about 3 or 4 years, I was part of the committee at the end of the year that would review the J policy. We're doing this in the middle, or kind of in the middle of the year. One that's unusual in my mind. Number 2, did we have a committee looking, who I see an awful lot of lines drawn through other things.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things I pride our county on is our discipline procedures, I guess, for lack of a better term, and the fairness of it. So, I mean.
Not a problem, sir. If you'd like to turn to your right, thank the gentleman to your right, because approximately a year ago, he brought forward to the board a review that, Mr. Morgan, he brought forward to the board a recommendation that the code of conduct go through an extensive review. Our director of student support spent about 4 months with a committee that included Mr. Morgan, central office staff, parents, and administrators. It also went through a review of all principals. Every principal had an opportunity to give input on this. So it is a little earlier in the time frame than we normally would see at the end of the year, but it was time to go ahead and bring it forward because we need to make sure it's set up for publishing over the summer. But yes, an extensive review, including a committee.
Did it come out of the committee unanimous, or was there any dissent?
The major bulk of what you see is a change in levels of consequences. And yes, sir, that was I won't say unanimous decision, but it was an overwhelming consensus. And I know, Mr. Morgan, you were part of some of those meetings as well. But I mean, we didn't take a vote per se.
Okay. So you keep referring to Mr. Morgan, so I'm supposed to trust Mr. Morgan? I do.
Explicitly, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Scammahorn. Mr. Banks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. We have situations where bullying is involved, where I think the law was changed last year, where a student does have the right to have self-defense. Is that covered at line number 1041, where it's got the different levels?
I believe 1041 is in a section that deals with physical violence.
Well, a fight would be, I think, physical.
Yes, sir. No, well, that's actually physical violence against an employee in that particular section. There are references to the Georgia Code on self-defense. That has been a code for many, many years in Georgia. And yes, that is taken into consideration.
Okay. Now, I understand that the self-defense does not apply when the person, the victim, continues the aggression. Is that correct?
So self-defense is first and foremost and you can help me out, it's a criminal code.
The answer is it might or it might not. That's just the only way to answer that question.
Okay, so who do we leave it up to, the principal or the APs at individual schools where it happens?
That's right.
Because it happened at a high school.
It would be based on the facts and whether that aggression was in self-defense.
And where did self-defense stop?
Yeah, and exactly, and there's a stopping point, but I think one of the purposes of this was giving discretion to administrators to try to sort through those things. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Banks, Dr. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned to address the subjective portions of the student code of conduct, you mentioned training for administrators and teachers. Are you aware of any portion of that training that deals with unconscious bias against any particular students or groups of students?
In my experience, we haven't used that term, but we have trained administrators for consistency. Many of our schools use what we call a matrix. They will take this code of conduct and they will make a determination before anything happens that at my school, within these ranges, this is how we're going to respond the first time, the second time, a third time. So we work to take that emotion out of the moment when a code of conduct infraction occurs. Okay. And so not using the term, illicit bias, but I think that's one of the things we've tried to address with providing consistency in the application of the code of conduct.
Okay. It may be good just to consider that in more detail. And also, have we done any review of data of those that have been disciplined over the last several years or so to see if we can pick up on any blind spots? And if so, have we addressed that?
Yes, sir. I know that our Director of Student Support, Ms. Cresswell, has been providing reports to the level assistant superintendents regarding individual schools. That's being reviewed with principals. So that's an ongoing discussion. It's not a one-time, here's your data, but that's an ongoing process.
Okay. Oh, that would be something that I think as board members, it would be good to see. I would love to see kind of where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. York. Okay. All right, next we have the approval of the agenda as amended to include the budget discussion after public comments. If there's no objection, all right. Now I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, legal,
Litigation.
all three. Do I have a motion? Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Scamhorn seconds. All those in favor? All right, that appears to be 7-0. Okay. All right, now what time?
As soon as possible.
All right, we'll be back as soon as possible. All right, I'm just not gonna make it, so. I've been sitting here.